The SUV was already half buried when Ryan Hale heard the scream. 8 years ago, he'd made a choice that cost him everything: his wife, his unborn son, his will to be anything more than a ghost in the Montana mountains. Now, through sheets of rain and cascading mud, a woman's bloodied hand reached for him from twisted metal. He didn't know that saving her would resurrect the past he'd spent nearly a decade burying. He didn't know she'd been searching for him all this time. Stay with us until the end and comment which city you're watching from. I want to see how far this story travels. The rain came down like God had opened a faucet and forgotten to turn it off. Ryan Hale's pickup truck crawled along Highway 93, windshield wipers beating a futile rhythm against the deluge. The radio had been crackling warnings about mudslides for the past hour, but Ryan had ignored them. He'd driven this mountain road 1,000 times, in every kind of weather Montana could throw at him. Besides, Ella was waiting at home with a fever, and the pharmacy in Kalispell was the only one open late enough to fill her prescription. The digital clock on the dash read 9:47 p.m. He'd been gone too long already. Ryan's hands tightened on the steering wheel as the truck rounded a curve. The headlights cut through the darkness, illuminating sheets of rain and not much else. The road here hugged the mountainside, with nothing but a flimsy guardrail between the asphalt and a 200-foot drop into the valley below. On the other side, the mountain rose up like a wall of shadow and stone. He was thinking about Ella, about how she'd tried to smile when he left, even though he could see the exhaustion in her 12-year-old eyes, when the mountain moved. At first, Ryan thought it was a trick of the rain, the way the headlights caught the water streaming down the rock face. But then he heard it, a sound like thunder but deeper, more primal, the kind of sound that made something ancient in his brain scream danger. He slammed on the brakes. The pickup's tires locked up on the wet pavement, sending the truck into a skid. Ryan fought the wheel, his heart hammering against his ribs, as tons of mud and rock exploded from the mountainside 50 yards ahead. The landslide hit the highway with the force of a freight train, swallowing the road in a wave of debris that seemed to move in slow motion and impossibly fast all at once. The truck fishtailed to a stop 30 feet from the edge of the slide. Ryan sat there for a moment, hands frozen on the wheel, watching the mountain continue to vomit earth and stone across the highway. His breath came in short, sharp gasps. 5 seconds earlier, and he would have been directly in its path. "Jesus," he whispered. The landslide was already settling, the worst of it over. What remained was a river of mud about 15 feet high that had completely blocked the road. Boulders the size of refrigerators sat embedded in the muck. Uprooted trees jutted out at odd angles, their branches stripped bare by the force of the slide. Ryan reached for his phone to call it in, and that's when he saw the taillight. It was barely visible, just a red glimmer half buried in the mud on the far side of the slide. At first he thought it might be debris, a broken reflector or a piece of plastic, but then he saw the shape around it, the distinctive curves of a vehicle's rear end, crushed and tilted at a sickening angle. Someone had been on the road when the mountain came down. "No, no, no!" Ryan threw open his door and jumped out into the rain. The cold hit him like a slap, instantly soaking through his flannel shirt. He ran toward the slide, his boots slipping on the wet pavement, his phone already in his hand trying to get a signal. Nothing. The storm was interfering with the tower, or the slide had taken it out. He reached the edge of the debris field and stopped, assessing. The mud was still shifting, settling under its own weight. Stepping onto it would be like walking on quicksand. One wrong move and he could go under. But that vehicle was out there. And if someone was inside... Ryan cupped his hands around his mouth. "Hello? Can anyone hear me?" The only answer was the hammering rain and the occasional rumble from the mountain above, warning that the slide might not be finished. He tried again, louder this time. "Is anyone out there?" This time he heard it. Faint, almost lost in the storm, but unmistakable. A human voice calling for help. Ryan's training kicked in before his brain could fully process what he was doing. 8 years ago, before everything fell apart, he'd been a paramedic. He'd responded to dozens of accidents, talked people through crises, kept them alive until the real help arrived. That muscle memory was still there, buried under years of grief and guilt, but still there. He scanned the debris field, looking for the safest path. The mud was deepest in the center where the slide had hit hardest, but along the edges it was thinner, more stable. If he could work his way around the perimeter, he might be able to reach the vehicle without getting trapped. "I'm coming," he shouted. "Stay calm. I'm coming to get you." He grabbed his emergency kit from the truck, a habit he'd never broken, even after he quit the ambulance service, and started across the slide. The first step was the hardest. His boot sank into the mud up to his ankle, and for a terrifying second he thought it would keep going, but the ground held, barely. Ryan moved slowly, testing each step before committing his weight. The rain pelted his face, running into his eyes, making it nearly impossible to see. Lightning cracked across the sky, throwing everything into stark relief for a split second before plunging it back into darkness. In that brief flash, he saw the vehicle more clearly. A black SUV, expensive looking, its front end completely buried while the rear stuck up out of the mud like a ship going down. "Keep talking," he called out. "Let me know where you are." "Here!" The voice was female, strained with pain and terror. "I'm here. Please, I can't. The door won't open." "I've got you." Ryan was closer now, maybe 20 feet away. "Just stay calm. What's your name?" "Caroline?" "My name is Caroline." "Caroline, I'm Ryan. I'm going to get you out, but I need you to do exactly what I say." "Can you do that?" Yes, please hurry." The mud was getting deeper. Ryan could feel it pulling at his boots with each step, trying to drag him down. He shifted his weight, moving more laterally now, looking for firmer ground. A large boulder sat half buried 10 feet from the SUV. If he could reach that, he could use it as an anchor point. Lightning flashed again, and this time Ryan saw something that made his blood run cold. The mud around the SUV was moving, slowly dragging the vehicle deeper into the debris field. In a few minutes, it would be completely buried. He abandoned caution and lunged forward, half running, half swimming through the mud. His boots were swallowed entirely now, the muck reaching up to his knees. Every step was a battle, but he kept pushing, kept moving until his hands finally hit the boulder. Ryan pulled himself onto it, gasping. From here, he could see into the SUV through the rear window. The back seat was empty, but in the front, he could make out a figure slumped against the driver's door, moving weakly. "Caroline, can you hear me?" "Yes." Her voice was weaker now. I can't feel my legs." Ryan's stomach dropped. That was bad. That was very bad. He slid down the other side of the boulder and slogged through the final stretch of mud to the SUV. The driver's side door was completely buried, but the passenger side was partially clear. He grabbed the handle and pulled, locked. "Caroline, I need you to unlock the doors." "I can't reach." "The controls are on the driver's side." Ryan looked around frantically. The mud was still rising, already lapping at the door handles. In another 5 minutes, the entire vehicle would be submerged. He pulled a small pry bar from his emergency kit and wedged it into the door frame. "Cover your face," he shouted. He threw his weight against the bar. The door frame groaned but held. He tried again, harder this time, feeling something in his shoulder pop with the effort. The frame started to give way. One more time. Ryan gritted his teeth and pulled with everything he had. The metal screamed, and suddenly the door was open, mud pouring into the vehicle's interior like a wave. Ryan grabbed the woman, Caroline, before the mud could pull her under. His hands found fabric, then skin, then the awful realization that her left leg was pinned under the dashboard, bent at an angle that made his stomach turn. "Hold on to me," he told her. "Not the car. Hold on to me." Her fingers dug into his shirt with desperate strength. Up close, even in the darkness and rain, Ryan could see she was probably in her late 30s, with dark hair plastered to her face and blood running from a gash on her forehead. Her eyes were wide with terror, but there was something else there too, a fierce determination to survive. "My leg," she gasped. "I can't." "I know. We're going to get you out." Ryan assessed the situation quickly. The dashboard had collapsed onto her leg, trapping it. He would need to lift it somehow, just enough to pull her free. But the mud was still rising, and the SUV was sinking faster now. He braced his feet against the doorframe and got his hands under the dashboard. "When I lift, you pull yourself out. Use your arms, use anything, but get yourself free. Understand?" Caroline nodded, tears mixing with the rain on her face. "On 3. 1, 2, 3. Ryan lifted. Pain exploded through his back and shoulders as he fought against the weight of the collapsed dashboard. Caroline screamed, a sound of pure agony, but she was moving, pulling herself backward with her arms. "That's it," Ryan grunted through clenched teeth. "Keep going!" The dashboard shifted, settling deeper, and Ryan knew he had seconds before it became impossible. He adjusted his grip, ignored the tearing sensation in his muscles, and lifted harder. Caroline came free with a sickening sound of tearing fabric and flesh. She fell backward out of the SUV, landing in the mud, and Ryan dropped the dashboard and grabbed her before she could slide away. "I've got you!" He pulled her against his chest, wrapping one arm around her waist. "Hold on to me! Not the car! Hold on to me!" The SUV groaned and settled another foot deeper into the mud. Ryan turned and started back toward the boulder, half carrying, half dragging Caroline. She was lighter than he expected, but the mud fought every step, trying to claim them both. "I can't," Caroline sobbed against his shoulder. "I can't do this." "Yes, you can." Ryan's voice was firm, the same tone he'd used dozens of times before, talking victims through their worst moments. "You're doing great. Just hold on." They reached the boulder. Ryan pushed Caroline up onto it, then hauled himself up after her. From here, the path back to solid ground looked impossibly far. The mud field stretched out before them like an ocean, and Ryan's arms were already shaking from the effort of carrying Caroline this far. But they'd made it this far. They would make it the rest of the way. "Can you put your arms around my neck?" he asked Caroline. She nodded weakly and complied. Ryan shifted her weight onto his back, piggyback style, and started the long journey back across the debris field. Each step was agony. The mud pulled at his legs and Caroline's weight pressed down on his shoulders and back. The rain continued to pour, and somewhere above them, the mountain rumbled with the promise of more slides to come. But Ryan kept moving, one step at a time, focusing on nothing but the next footfall, the next yard of progress. He was halfway across when his right leg went completely into the mud, sinking up to his hip. For a terrifying moment, he thought he was going under, that they both were. But his left foot found something solid, a buried log maybe, or a rock, and he used it to leverage himself up and out. "Almost there," he gasped, more to himself than to Caroline. "Almost there." His truck's headlights were beacons in the darkness. 20 feet, 15, 10. And then they were across. Ryan's boots hit solid pavement, and he nearly collapsed with relief. He staggered to the truck and gently lowered Caroline to the ground, leaning her against the side of the vehicle. "We made it," he said, breathing hard. "We're safe." Caroline looked up at him, and in the glow of the truck's headlights, Ryan saw her clearly for the first time. Despite the blood and mud, despite the pain etched into her features, there was something striking about her face. Strong cheekbones, intelligent eyes, and an expression that seemed to be studying him with an intensity that felt out of place given what they'd just been through. "Your arm," she whispered. Ryan glanced down. His left sleeve had been torn away during the rescue, revealing the long, jagged scar that ran from his elbow to his wrist. It was an old injury, 8 years healed, but still visible. Still a reminder. "It's nothing," he said quickly, pulling away. "Old injury. Let me look at your leg." But Caroline's hand shot out and grabbed his wrist with surprising strength. Her eyes locked onto the scar, then up to his face, and something changed in her expression. Recognition? Wonder? Ryan couldn't tell. "You," she breathed. "It's you. I've been searching for you for 8 years. Ryan froze. The rain hammered down around them, but suddenly all he could hear was his own heartbeat thundering in his ears. "What are you talking about?" "The scar." Caroline's fingers traced the air above his arm, not quite touching, but following the line of the old wound. "The bus accident. The little girl. You pulled her out of the water." The world tilted. Ryan stumbled back, nearly falling, his mind reeling. The bus accident. The sinking bus. The little girl named Sophia. The day Maya died. "You saved my daughter," Caroline said, tears streaming down her face now. 8 years ago. You pulled her from that bus while it was sinking into the river. You got her out, got her to shore, and then you disappeared. I've been looking for you ever since." Ryan couldn't speak. His throat had closed up, and all he could see was that day playing out in his mind like a film reel. The school bus careening off the bridge, hitting the water, the screams of children, the desperate scramble to get them out. He'd pulled out 5 kids before the bus went under. 5 kids, including a little girl who'd grabbed his arm so hard her fingernails had torn through his skin, leaving the scar that Caroline was staring at now. He'd saved 5 kids. And while he was doing it, his pregnant wife had been in their car on the other side of the bridge, hit by the same truck that had pushed the bus into the water. By the time Ryan made it back to shore, by the time he found out what had happened, Maya was already gone. Maya and their unborn son. Gone. Because he'd stopped to help, because he'd made a choice. "No," Ryan managed to say, his voice barely a whisper. "You're wrong. That wasn't... I'm not... It was you." Caroline's voice was certain, even through her pain. "I never forgot your face. I hired investigators. I went to every hospital, every fire station, every paramedic unit in 3 states. I had this theory that you were emergency services because of how you moved, how you knew exactly what to do. But no one could find you. You'd vanished." Ryan's hands were shaking. He forced himself to focus on her leg, on the immediate medical need, because if he let himself think about anything else, he was going to fall apart. "We need to stop the bleeding. You're going into shock." "The scar," Caroline insisted, her voice getting weaker. "I remember the scar. Sophia told me about it. She said the man who saved her had a mark on his arm, like lightning. I've never stopped looking." Ryan pulled bandages from his kit, his movements mechanical. "You're confused. The head injury?" "I'm not confused." Caroline reached up and grabbed his face, forcing him to look at her. Her hands were cold, trembling, but her gaze was absolutely clear. "You saved my daughter's life, and then you disappeared like a ghost. Why? Why did you run?" "Because I lost everything that day," Ryan wanted to scream. "Because while I was pulling your daughter out of the water, my wife was dying. Because every time I close my eyes, I see Maya's car crushed against the bridge pillar, and I know that if I hadn't stopped, if I had just driven past that bus, I could have reached her. I could have saved her instead." But he didn't say any of that. Instead, he turned away and finished bandaging Caroline's leg with hands that wouldn't stop shaking. "I'm going to get you to a hospital," he said. "There's no signal here, but once we're..." A sound from above cut him off. Not thunder this time, something worse. The mountain was moving again. Ryan looked up just in time to see another section of the slope give way. It was smaller than the first slide, but it was coming right for them. "Get in the truck," he shouted. He grabbed Caroline and practically threw her into the passenger seat, slamming the door behind her. The rumble was getting louder, closer. Ryan sprinted around to the driver's side, jumped in, threw the truck into reverse and floored it. The pickup shot backward just as the second wave of mud and rock hit the spot where they'd been standing. Debris pelted the windshield. A stone the size of a basketball bounced off the hood, leaving a crater in the metal. Ryan kept the truck in reverse, not daring to take his eyes off the road behind him until they'd put 100 yards between them and the slide. Only then did he stop, his chest heaving, his entire body trembling with adrenaline. Next to him, Caroline had slumped against the door, her eyes half closed. Her skin was pale, too pale, and her breathing was shallow. "Caroline," Ryan reached over and gently shook her shoulder. "Caroline, stay with me." Her eyes fluttered open. "Sophia," she murmured, "I have to tell Sophia." "You will. You'll tell her everything, but right now I need you to stay awake, okay? Can you do that for me?" Caroline nodded weakly. Where are we going?" Ryan looked at the road ahead. Highway 93 stretched out into the darkness, winding its way down the mountain. The hospital in Kalispell was at least an hour away in good weather. In this storm, with the roads flooding and the possibility of more slides, it might be impossible to reach. But there was another option. "My place," he said, making the decision. "It's 20 minutes from here. I've got medical supplies, clean water, heat. We'll get you stabilized there, and then once the storm breaks, we'll get you to a hospital." "Your place," Caroline repeated, her words starting to slur. "The man who saved Sophia has a place." "Stop talking. Save your strength." Ryan put the truck in drive and started down the mountain, going as fast as he dared on the treacherous roads. Rain lashed the windshield, and every few minutes lightning would illuminate the landscape in flashes of white. The road was a river in places, water streaming across the asphalt, and twice Ryan had to navigate around fallen trees. Next to him, Caroline drifted in and out of consciousness. Every time her breathing got too shallow, Ryan would call her name, ask her a question, force her to engage. It was basic triage. Keep the patient talking, keep them focused, keep them alive. "Tell me about Sophia," he said, when Caroline's eyes started to close again. "What's she like now?" She's 15. Caroline's lips curved into a faint smile. "Smart. So smart. Wants to be an engineer. She remembers you, you know. Sometimes she draws the man with the lightning scar." Ryan's jaw clenched. She shouldn't remember. She should forget. "Why?" Caroline's eyes opened, focusing on him with difficulty. "Why should she forget the person who gave her life?" "Because I don't deserve to be remembered," Ryan thought. "Because I'm not a hero. Because the cost of saving her was too high." He didn't answer. Instead, he focused on the road, on getting them home safely. The turnoff to his property appeared through the rain like a gift. Ryan took the turn, the truck bouncing along the rutted dirt road that led through the trees to his cabin. It wasn't much, 1,200 square feet of wood and stone that he'd built himself over the course of 3 years, more to have something to do with his hands than because he needed the space. But it was solid, dry, and most importantly, it had everything they needed right now. The cabin materialized out of the darkness, its windows dark. Ryan pulled up as close to the front porch as he could, killed the engine, and turned to Caroline. "We're here. I'm going to carry you inside," and then he stopped. The porch light had just flicked on, and standing in the doorway was Ella. His daughter looked small in her oversized pajamas, her blonde hair tangled from sleep, her face flushed with fever. She'd obviously heard the truck and come to investigate, even though he'd told her to stay in bed. "Ella, get back inside," Ryan called through the closed window. But Ella didn't move. She stood there in the doorway, staring at the truck, at the mud-covered vehicle, and the man and woman inside, and something in her expression made Ryan's heart clench. She knew. Somehow, she already knew that everything was about to change. Ryan grabbed his coat from behind the seat and threw open his door. "Ella, I need towels and the medical kit from the bathroom. Now!" That broke the spell. Ella nodded and disappeared into the cabin. Ryan turned back to Caroline, who was watching him with a strange expression. "You have a daughter," she whispered. "Yes." Ryan scooped her up as gently as he could. "Her name is Ella. She's 12. She looks like you. She looks like her mother." Ryan kicked the truck door closed and carried Caroline toward the cabin. The rain was starting to ease up, transitioning from a deluge to a steady downpour. Her mother was... Maya died 8 years ago. He felt Caroline stiffen in his arms. "The bus accident," she breathed. "Oh, God. You lost someone that day, too." Ryan didn't answer. He couldn't. If he started talking about Maya now, he would break, and he needed to hold it together for both Caroline and Ella. He carried her inside and laid her on the couch in the main room. The cabin was warm. Ella had kept the fire going, and blessedly dry. Ryan grabbed blankets from the closet and tucked them around Caroline, while Ella appeared with an armful of towels and the medical kit. "Is she going to be okay?" Ella asked quietly. "Yes." Ryan hoped it was true. "But I need you to help me. Can you do that?" Ella nodded, her face serious. She'd always been mature for her age, forced to grow up too fast after Maya died. At 12, she could cook basic meals, manage the household accounts, and apparently keep her cool in a medical emergency. Ryan worked quickly, cleaning Caroline's wounds and checking for signs of internal bleeding. Her leg was badly bruised and lacerated, but miraculously, it didn't appear to be broken. The gash on her head looked worse than it was. Head wounds always bled more than they should, and her other injuries were relatively minor. She was lucky. Incredibly, impossibly lucky. "Ella, can you get her some water?" Ryan asked as he finished bandaging the leg wound. Ella nodded and hurried to the kitchen. Caroline's eyes followed her, then came back to Ryan. "She's beautiful," Caroline whispered. "And she has your eyes." "She has Maya's eyes," Ryan corrected gently. "She has your kindness." Caroline winced as Ryan checked her ribs. "You raised her alone?" For 8 years. That's not easy. Nothing worth doing is easy. Ryan pulled the blankets back over her. You need to rest. We'll talk more in the morning. But Caroline's hand shot out and grabbed his wrist, pulling him close. Don't, she said urgently. Don't disappear again, please. Sophia, she needs to know. She needs to meet you. I'm not the person you think I am, Ryan said quietly. Yes, you are. Caroline's grip tightened. You saved my daughter 8 years ago, and you saved me tonight. That makes you exactly who I think you are. Ella returned with the water, and Ryan gently extracted himself from Caroline's grip. He helped her drink, then checked her vitals one more time. Her pulse was steadier, her breathing more regular. She was going to make it through the night. Ella, show our guest where the bathroom is and get her some clean clothes, Ryan said. I'll be right back. He stepped out onto the porch and stood in the rain, letting it wash away the mud and blood and fear. His entire body ached, and his hands still trembled with aftershock adrenaline. But that wasn't what made him lean against the porch railing and close his eyes. It was the scar on his arm. The ghost of Sophia's fingernails digging into his flesh as he pulled her from the water. The memory of Maya's car, crushed and smoking on the bridge. For 8 years, he'd run from that day. He'd moved to Montana, changed his name legally from Ryan Garrett to Ryan Hale, left the paramedic service, and built a life that was deliberately small, deliberately quiet, deliberately alone except for Ella. And now the past had literally crashed back into his life in the form of a woman named Caroline Pierce, who'd spent 8 years searching for the man who saved her daughter, the man who'd let his wife die. Ryan took a deep breath and opened his eyes. Through the window, he could see Ella helping Caroline toward the bathroom, the two of them moving slowly, carefully. His daughter was talking, probably explaining where things were, being her usual helpful self. He should go back inside. Caroline needed monitoring through the night in case her condition worsened. And Ella needed him too. She was sick, and he'd abandoned her to get medicine that was now probably somewhere at the bottom of the landslide. But for just another moment, Ryan stood in the rain and let himself remember Maya, her laugh, her smile, the way she used to rest her hand on her pregnant belly and talk to their unborn son. I'm sorry, he whispered to the storm. I'm so sorry. The rain didn't answer. It never did. Finally, Ryan pushed off the railing and went back inside. There was work to do, a patient to monitor, a daughter to care for. The past would have to wait. But as he closed the door behind him, he couldn't shake the feeling that waiting time was over. Ready or not, the past had found him. And this time, it wasn't letting go. Inside, Ella had gotten Caroline settled in the guest room, a small space that Ryan had built but never really used. Caroline was lying on the bed, wearing one of Ryan's old sweaters and a pair of Ella's sweatpants that were comically too short. Her leg was elevated on pillows, and Ella had placed a glass of water on the nightstand. She said you should check her again in an hour, Ella reported, and that if she starts getting confused or can't wake up, we should call 911. That's right. Ryan ruffled his daughter's hair. You did good, kiddo. Now get back to bed. You're still running a fever. I'm okay. Ella looked at Caroline, then back at her father. Dad? Who is she really? Ryan hesitated. Just someone who needed help. She knows you from before. Ella's voice was soft, careful. I heard her talking about a scar, about someone you saved. Ryan's jaw tightened. Ella was too perceptive, had always been too perceptive. She got that from Maya. It's complicated, Elle. It's about the day Mom died, isn't it? Ella's eyes filled with tears. The day you won't talk about. Ryan's heart broke. He knelt down so he was level with his daughter. Ella, I found the articles, Dad. Years ago. I know you saved kids from a bus accident. I know Mom died that same day. A tear spilled down her cheek. I know you think it's your fault. Ella, but it's not. She threw her arms around his neck, hugging him fiercely. It's not your fault. You did what Mom would have wanted. You saved people. That's who you are. Ryan held his daughter and felt something crack inside his chest, something that had been frozen for 8 years. He didn't cry. He'd forgotten how. But he held Ella tight and let himself feel, just for a moment, the love and loss and guilt that he usually kept locked away. "I miss her," he whispered. "Me too," Ella whispered back. "But she'd be proud of you, Dad. I know she would." They stayed like that for a long moment before Ella finally pulled back, wiping her eyes. "The lady in there," she said, nodding toward the guest room. "Her daughter was one of the kids you saved, wasn't she?" Ryan nodded, not trusting his voice. "Then I'm glad you did it." Ella smiled through her tears. "I'm glad you saved her, and I'm glad she found you." Ella: "I know you don't think you deserve to be found, but you do, Dad. You deserve to be more than just this." She gestured at the cabin, at their isolated life. "You deserve to be happy again." "I am happy. I have you." "You have me," Ella agreed, "but you should have more. You should have friends, and maybe—" She paused, then pushed forward. "Maybe someday someone like Mom. Someone who makes you smile the way you used to." I don't think—" "Just think about it," Ella interrupted. "Please?" "For me?" Ryan looked at his daughter, this wise, wonderful, impossibly mature 12-year-old, and wondered when she'd stopped being his little girl and started being his conscience. "Okay," he said softly. "I'll think about it." Ella smiled and kissed his cheek. "That's all I ask. Now I'm going to bed before you realize I'm supposed to be resting." She disappeared down the hall to her room, leaving Ryan alone in the main area. He sat on the couch and put his head in his hands, suddenly exhausted. This wasn't how tonight was supposed to go. He was supposed to get medicine, come home, take care of Ella, and maintain the careful, controlled life he'd built. Instead, he'd pulled a woman from a landslide, discovered she was the mother of a girl he'd saved 8 years ago, and had his daughter tell him it was time to stop hiding. From the guest room, he heard Caroline call out weakly, "Ryan?" He got up and went to check on her. She was still lying down, but her eyes were open and more alert than before. "How are you feeling?" he asked. "Like I got crushed by a mountain," Caroline said with a weak attempt at humor. "But alive. Thanks to you." "You should rest." "I know, but I wanted to—" She trailed off, looking at him with that intense gaze again. "I wanted to thank you, properly. You saved my life tonight." "It's what anyone would have done." "No, it's not." Caroline shook her head. "Most people would have stayed in their truck. Most people would have called for help and waited. You risked your life, again, just like you did 8 years ago." Ryan didn't know what to say to that. "I meant what I said," Caroline continued. "I've been looking for you for 8 years. I hired private investigators. I followed every lead. I needed to find you, to thank you, to—" She paused. "To understand why you saved my daughter and then vanished." "Because I couldn't stay," Ryan said simply. "Because that day cost me everything, and I couldn't bear to be reminded of it. Your wife. And my son. She was 6 months pregnant." Caroline's expression crumpled. "Oh God, Ryan, I'm so sorry. I didn't know." "How could you?" Ryan moved to the window, looking out at the rain. "The news covered the bus accident. They didn't cover what happened to me." "Were you there? When she—" "No." The word came out harsh. "I was pulling kids from the water while she was dying on the other side of the bridge. By the time I got to her—" He stopped, unable to continue. The room was silent except for the rain drumming on the roof. Finally, Caroline spoke, her voice soft. "You couldn't have known. You couldn't have saved both—" "I could have saved her," Ryan interrupted. "If I hadn't stopped for the bus. If I'd just driven past, I could have reached Maya in time. But I made a choice. I chose to save your daughter and 4 other kids. And Maya paid the price. That's not fair to yourself." "Maybe not." Ryan turned back to face her. "But it's the truth. And it's why you shouldn't have spent 8 years looking for me. I'm not a hero, Caroline. I'm just a man who made an impossible choice and has to live with the consequences." "You are a hero," Caroline said firmly. "To Sophia. To those other 4 kids. To me. And I suspect to your daughter too." Ryan thought about Ella's words. "You did what Mom would have wanted. You saved people. That's who you are." "I need to check your vitals," he said, changing the subject. "And then you need to sleep." We'll talk more in the morning. Caroline let him change the subject, probably because she was too tired to push further. Ryan checked her pulse, her temperature, her pupil response. Everything looked stable. The danger had passed. Sleep, he ordered gently. I'll be right outside if you need anything. Ryan? Caroline caught his hand as he turned to leave. I know this is overwhelming. I know you didn't want to be found, but I'm glad I found you. And I think maybe you need to be found. Ryan didn't answer. He gently pulled his hand free and left the room, closing the door softly behind him. In the main area, he built up the fire and settled into the armchair with a blanket. He should try to sleep. He was exhausted, but his mind was racing too fast. He thought about the landslide, about Caroline's face when she recognized his scar, about Ella's tears and her insistence that he deserved to be happy. He thought about Maya, about the life they'd planned together, about the son they'd named but never met. And he thought about Sophia, 15 now, according to Caroline, who apparently drew pictures of the man with the lightning scar. The man who'd saved her life. The man who'd lost everything because of it. Outside, the storm continued to rage, but inside the cabin, it was warm and quiet. Ryan stared into the fire and wondered if 8 years was long enough to run from the past, or if the past, having finally caught up to him, might offer something he'd never expected, a chance at redemption. Ryan woke to the smell of coffee and the sound of voices in the kitchen. For a disorienting moment, he thought he was dreaming, that he'd fallen asleep in the chair 8 years ago and was about to wake up to find Maya humming while she made breakfast, her hand resting on her pregnant belly. But then the stiffness in his neck reminded him exactly where he was, and the events of the previous night came flooding back with painful clarity. He pushed himself out of the chair, wincing as his muscles protested. Every part of his body ached from the rescue. His shoulders felt like they'd been pulled from their sockets, and there was a deep bruise forming on his ribs where he'd slammed into the boulder. The voices in the kitchen grew clearer as he approached. One was Ella's, animated and curious. The other was Caroline's, weaker but warm. Ryan stopped in the doorway and took in the scene. Caroline was sitting at the kitchen table, her injured leg propped up on a chair, wearing the same oversized clothes from last night. Her dark hair was still damp and tangled, and the bandage on her forehead stark white against her bruised skin. But her eyes were alert, focused on Ella, who was scrambling eggs at the stove with the practiced efficiency of someone who'd been cooking for herself for years. Dad always says 3 minutes is perfect, Ella was explaining. Any longer, and they get rubbery. Your dad sounds like he knows his way around a kitchen, Caroline said. She looked up and saw Ryan in the doorway. Good morning. I hope we didn't wake you. I should have been up already. Ryan moved into the kitchen and went straight to Caroline, checking her over with a professional eye. How are you feeling? Sore? Stiff? But better than I have any right to feel after being buried by a mountain. Caroline smiled slightly. Your daughter's been taking excellent care of me. Ella's good at that. Ryan caught his daughter's eye and gave her a questioning look. She responded with a small nod, letting him know that she was feeling better, that the fever had broken during the night. I made coffee, Ella said, gesturing to the pot. And there's enough eggs for everyone. Ryan poured himself a cup and stood at the counter, watching Caroline. In the morning light, he could see the full extent of her injuries. Besides the head wound and the leg, she had bruises blooming across her arms and a nasty scrape along her jaw. She moved carefully, like someone who knew any sudden movement would bring pain. But what struck him most was how she looked at Ella, with a mixture of curiosity and something deeper, something almost wistful. Your daughter tells me she's quite the scientist, Caroline said, accepting a plate of eggs from Ella. She's been explaining her current experiment with soil composition and plant growth. It's for the science fair, Ella explained, bringing plates for Ryan and herself. I'm testing whether adding different minerals to the soil affects how fast tomatoes grow. That's impressive work. Caroline took a careful bite of eggs. Have you thought about what you want to study in college? Ella's face lit up. Environmental science, maybe, or forestry, something where I can work outside. She glanced at Ryan. Dad says I'm good at understanding systems. Your dad is right. Caroline's gaze shifted to Ryan. He seems to be right about a lot of things. There was weight in those words, layers of meaning that Ryan didn't want to unpack at 7 in the morning. He focused on his eggs, letting Ella fill the silence with chatter about her project, about the cabin, about the mountains. Caroline listened with genuine interest, asking questions that showed she was really paying attention. Ryan found himself watching the interaction, struck by how natural it seemed, how easily Caroline drew Ella out, how his normally reserved daughter was opening up to this stranger. Not a stranger, he reminded himself. This was Sophia's mother, the woman who'd spent 8 years searching for him. After breakfast, Ella reluctantly headed back to her room to rest, and Ryan found himself alone with Caroline. He cleared the dishes while she watched him, that intense gaze following his movements. "You don't have to take care of me," Caroline said quietly. "I can manage. You have a concussion and a badly injured leg. You can barely walk." Ryan dried his hands on a towel. "I need to check your bandages anyway. Make sure there's no infection setting in." "Always the paramedic?" "Former paramedic?" "Is that what you do now? Out here in the middle of nowhere?" Caroline gestured at the cabin. "What made you choose Montana?" "It's quiet. Isolated. Good place to raise a kid." Ryan pulled out his medical kit. "I work as a wilderness guide during the summer, hunting guide in the fall, odd jobs in the winter. It pays the bills." "That's quite a change from emergency medicine." "It's the change I needed." Ryan knelt beside Caroline's chair and carefully began unwrapping the bandage on her leg. The wound looked good, no signs of infection, minimal swelling. He'd done a solid job patching her up, even with limited supplies. Caroline hissed in pain as he cleaned the wound. "Sorry," he murmured. "It's fine. I've survived worse." She paused. "Actually, that's a lie. I've never survived worse. Last night was the closest I've ever come to dying." "You weren't going to die. I wouldn't have let that happen." "Why?" Caroline's question was soft but direct. "You didn't know me. You didn't owe me anything. Why did you risk your life?" Ryan's hands stilled on the bandage. "Because it was the right thing to do." "Is that the only reason?" "What other reason would there be?" Caroline was quiet for a moment, watching him work. 8 years ago, you risked your life to save 5 children you didn't know. Last night, you did it again for me. That's not normal, Ryan. Most people don't have that instinct." "Most people do," Ryan disagreed. "They just don't always get the chance to prove it." "I don't think that's true. I think you're someone who runs toward danger instead of away from it, even when it costs you everything." Ryan finished wrapping the fresh bandage and stood up, putting distance between them. "We should try to get you to a hospital today. The storm's passed and the road should be clearing." "You're doing it again," Caroline observed. "Doing what?" "Running away, changing the subject when things get too close to the truth." She shifted in her chair, grimacing at the movement. "I'm not trying to make you uncomfortable, Ryan. I'm trying to understand. For 8 years, I've built up this image of who you are in my head, the man who saved my daughter and then disappeared. I need to know if that image is real or if I've been chasing a ghost." "You've been chasing a ghost," Ryan said flatly. "The man you're imagining doesn't exist. I'm not a hero. I'm just someone who made a choice and has to live with it." "Stop saying that." Caroline's voice sharpened. "Stop diminishing what you did. You saved 6 lives, 5 children that day, and me last night. That matters, Ryan. That means something." "It means I was too focused on strangers to save my own wife." The words burst out before Ryan could stop them. "It means while I was playing hero, Maya was trapped in our car, dying, and I wasn't there. It means my son never got to take a breath because I chose to save other people's children instead of rushing to save my own family." The silence that followed was deafening. Ryan turned away, his hands clenched into fists, his breathing ragged. He hadn't meant to say that. He never talked about it, never let the words out. But Caroline's persistent questions had torn open wounds that had never properly healed. "I'm sorry," Caroline said softly. "Ryan, I'm so sorry." "Don't." He kept his back to her. "Don't apologize for something that isn't your fault." "It's not your fault either." "You don't know that." "Yes, I do." Caroline's voice was firm. "Because I read the accident reports, all of them. When I was trying to find you, I read every document related to that day. The truck driver who caused the accident was drunk, Ryan. He crossed the median, hit the bus, sent it into the river, and then slammed into 3 other vehicles, including your wife's car. None of that was your fault. Ryan's shoulders tensed. If I had been there, you would have been hit too. Or you would have been killed trying to help Maya. Or you would have pulled her out but lost more children from the bus. Caroline's voice cracked. You made an impossible choice in an impossible situation, and you saved as many people as you could, including my daughter. At the cost of my wife and son. At no cost. The drunk driver cost you your family, not you, not your choice to help. Caroline struggled to stand, using the table for support. Ryan, look at me. He didn't turn around. Please. Finally, reluctantly, Ryan turned to face her. Caroline had pulled herself upright, balancing on her good leg, her face pale with pain and determination. If Maya was anything like your daughter, Caroline said, she would have wanted you to help those children. She would have been proud of you, and she would be heartbroken to know that you've spent 8 years punishing yourself for being exactly who she fell in love with. Ryan felt something crack in his chest. You don't know what Maya would have wanted. You're right. I didn't know her. Caroline took a painful step toward him. But I know my daughter. And I know that every year on the anniversary of that accident, Sophia lights a candle and says a prayer for the man with the scar and his family. Because I told her that heroes often pay a price for their heroism, and we should honor that sacrifice. I'm not a hero, Ryan said, but his voice had lost its conviction. You are to Sophia. You are to those other 4 children who are alive because of you. You are to me. Caroline reached out and gently touched the scar on his arm, the same way she had last night. And I think, deep down, you are to your daughter too, even if you can't see it. Ryan looked down at Caroline's hand on his scar, at the physical reminder of the choice that had defined the last 8 years of his life. He'd hated this scar, had considered having it surgically removed more than once, but Ella had asked him to keep it, had said it was a part of him, a part of their story. I should have been able to save everyone, he whispered. No one can save everyone, not even you. Caroline squeezed his arm gently. But you saved who you could, and that has to be enough. Before Ryan could respond, the satellite phone on the wall rang. He'd almost forgotten it existed. He rarely got calls on it, used it mainly for emergency contact with his guiding clients. He pulled away from Caroline and answered. Hello? Mr. Hale? The voice was official, clipped. This is Sergeant Morrison with Montana Highway Patrol. We're calling about the landslide on Highway 93 last night. A vehicle registered to a Caroline Pierce was found at the scene. We're trying to locate the driver. Ryan glanced at Caroline. She's here. She's safe. Thank God. The relief in Morrison's voice was palpable. We've been searching since first light. Can you tell me her condition? Concussed, lacerations, possible soft tissue damage to her left leg. She needs to be transported to a hospital, but she's stable. Ryan rattled off the medical information automatically, falling back into the professional distance of his old job. We can have a helicopter there in 30 minutes. What's your location? Ryan gave the coordinates, then hung up and turned to Caroline. They're sending a helicopter. You'll be in Kalispell General within the hour. That fast? Caroline looked almost disappointed. I suppose I should call my office. Let them know I'm alive. Your phone probably didn't survive the crash, and no, but you have a landline, may I? Ryan gestured to the phone. While Caroline called her office, apparently she was the CEO of a tech company in San Francisco, though Ryan only caught fragments of the conversation. He went to check on Ella. His daughter was lying in bed reading a book, but she looked up when he entered. They're sending a helicopter for Caroline, Ryan told her. Already? Ella set down her book. But she just got here. She needs proper medical care. X-rays, CT scans, things I can't provide. I know. Ella was quiet for a moment. Dad, are you okay? I'm fine. You're lying. Ella sat up, studying him with those too wise eyes. I heard you talking to her. Well, some of it. The walls are thin. Ryan sat on the edge of her bed. I'm sorry you had to hear that. Don't be. I'm glad. Ella reached out and took his hand. I'm glad you finally talked about it. About Mom. About that day. Ella, I know it's hard for you. I know you think talking about it makes it worse. But Dad, keeping it all locked up inside isn't helping anyone. Not you, not me. She squeezed his hand. I want to know about Mom. I want to hear stories about her, about who she was, about what she loved. And I want to know about that day too, about the choice you made, because it's part of our story. Ryan looked at his daughter and saw Maya in every line of her face, the determined set of her jaw, the compassion in her eyes, the strength that belied her 12 years. Your mom loved thunderstorms, he found himself saying. She'd open all the windows and sit on the porch watching the lightning. She said it made her feel small in a good way, reminded her that the universe was bigger than any problem she was facing. Ella smiled. Tell me more. So Ryan did. For the first time in 8 years, he talked about Maya, not just the day she died, but the life she lived. He told Ella about their first date, a hiking trip that turned into a comedy of errors when they got lost and had to be rescued by a park ranger. He told her about Maya's terrible singing voice and how she'd belt out songs in the car anyway, laughing when Ryan covered his ears. He told her about the day they found out about the pregnancy, about how Maya had cried and laughed and said she couldn't wait to meet their son. We were going to name him James, Ryan said quietly, after your grandfather. James Hale, Ella whispered. I like that. Your mom would have loved you so much, Elle, would have been so proud of who you're becoming. I know. Ella leaned her head against his shoulder. Because I have you. And you love me enough for both of you. They sat like that until they heard the distant thrum of helicopter blades. Ryan stood and helped Ella to her feet. Come on, let's say goodbye to our guest. Caroline was waiting in the main room, leaning on a makeshift crutch Ryan had fashioned from a broken broom handle. She'd managed to clean herself up a bit, though she still looked like she'd gone 10 rounds with a mountain and lost. The helicopter's close, Ryan said. I'll carry you out. I can walk. Not on that leg, you can't. Caroline opened her mouth to argue, then seemed to think better of it. Fine, but this doesn't mean I'm helpless. Never said you were. Ryan scooped her up carefully, mindful of her injuries. She was lighter than she looked, all lean muscle and determination under the borrowed clothes. They stepped out onto the porch just as the helicopter appeared over the tree line. It circled once, found the clearing near the cabin, and set down in a wash of prop blast and noise. 2 paramedics jumped out, running toward them with a stretcher. Ryan recognized one of them, Jake Martinez, who'd been a rookie when Ryan left the service. Jake's eyes widened when he saw who was carrying the patient. Ryan? Ryan Garrett? Holy shit, man, we thought you were dead. Not dead, just gone. Ryan helped the paramedics transfer Caroline to the stretcher. Patient's name is Caroline Pierce, age 38, involved in vehicle accident during last night's landslide. Concussion, lacerations, possible ligament damage to left knee. She's been stable all night, vitals are good, but she needs imaging. Jake was staring at him. Man, it's good to see you. The whole unit wondered what happened. You just disappeared after... He stopped himself, glancing at Ella. After the accident. Yeah, well, needed a change of scenery. Ryan finished his handoff report, keeping his voice professional. She's all yours. The paramedics secured Caroline to the stretcher, but before they could lift her, she grabbed Ryan's hand. Wait, she said. Ryan, I need to tell you something. You need to get to the hospital. This can't wait. Caroline's grip tightened. I meant what I said about searching for you, about wanting Sophia to meet you. That's not going to change just because I'm getting on a helicopter. Caroline, let me finish. She looked up at him, her eyes intense. I know you think you don't deserve recognition for what you did. I know you've been hiding out here, punishing yourself, trying to forget. But Sophia needs to meet you. She needs to thank you herself. And I think you need to meet her too. I don't think that's a good idea. Please. Caroline's voice broke. Please don't disappear again. Give me your number, your email, something. Let me contact you once I'm recovered. Ryan hesitated. Every instinct told him to refuse, to let Caroline get on that helicopter and fly out of his life the same way she'd crashed into it. But then he felt Ella's hand slip into his free one, squeezing gently. He looked down at his daughter, and she nodded, just once. But it was enough. Fine, Ryan said. He rattled off his email address, which Caroline quickly memorized. But I'm not promising anything. I'm not asking for promises, just possibilities. Caroline smiled, then winced as the paramedics lifted the stretcher. Thank you, Ryan, for everything. Just get better. They loaded Caroline into the helicopter. Jake gave Ryan a long look before climbing in. You should come by the station sometime, Jake called over the noise. A lot of people would like to see you again. Ryan didn't answer. He stood with his arm around Ella, watching the helicopter lift off and bank toward Kalispell. Within minutes, it was just a speck in the distance, and then it was gone. You gave her your email, Ella observed. I did. That's progress. That's temporary insanity. Ryan turned back toward the cabin. Come on, you should rest. But Ella planted her feet. Dad, do you think you'll actually talk to her again? If she emails you? Ryan looked at his daughter's hopeful face and sighed. I don't know, Elle. Maybe. We'll see. She seems nice, and her daughter, Sophia, she sounds amazing. She probably is. I'd like to meet her someday, if that's okay. Ryan's heart clenched. Of course Ella would want that. She had so few connections to the world outside their small bubble. No grandparents, both his and Maya's parents had passed before Ella was born. No siblings, no extended family to speak of, just Ryan and the vast Montana wilderness. Maybe, he said carefully, someday. Ella beamed and hugged him tight before heading back inside. Ryan stood on the porch a moment longer, looking at the sky where the helicopter had disappeared. He'd given Caroline his email address. That single act felt like opening a door he'd spent 8 years keeping bolted shut. Part of him wanted to call her back, to take it back, to slam that door closed again before it was too late. But another part of him, a part that sounded suspiciously like Maya's voice, whispered that maybe it was already too late. Maybe the moment he'd pulled Caroline from that landslide, he'd set something in motion that couldn't be stopped. Maybe it was time to stop running. The next 2 days passed quietly. Ella's fever broke completely, and Ryan fell back into their normal routine: breakfast, homeschool lessons, chores, dinner, reading before bed. It was comfortable, safe, exactly the life he'd built for them. But something had shifted. Ryan found himself checking his email more often than usual, half expecting, half dreading a message from Caroline. He found himself telling Ella more stories about Maya, opening up memories he'd kept locked away. And he found himself looking at the scar on his arm differently, not as a reminder of failure, but as evidence of survival. On the third day, the email came. Ryan was chopping wood when Ella came running out of the cabin, his laptop in her hands. Dad, she emailed you! Caroline! Ryan buried the axe in the chopping block and took the laptop, his hands suddenly unsteady. The email was brief but warm. Ryan, I'm out of the hospital and recovering well. The doctors say I was incredibly lucky. I know I have you to thank for that. I wanted to reach out and let you know that I told Sophia about finding you. She'd like to meet you, if you're willing. No pressure, no expectations. Just a conversation between two people whose lives crossed on the worst and best day of their respective histories. Please think about it. You have my number now. Caroline. Below the message was a phone number with a San Francisco area code. Ryan stared at the screen, his mind racing. Meeting Sophia meant confronting that day head on. It meant looking into the eyes of someone he'd saved and accepting that his choice had value, had meaning, had been worth something. It meant forgiving himself. What are you going to do? Ella asked quietly. Ryan looked at his daughter, then back at the email. I don't know. Do you want to meet her, Sophia? Ryan stopped. Did he want to meet her? I'm not sure. Can I tell you what I think? Ella didn't wait for an answer. I think you're scared. I think meeting her means accepting that what you did that day mattered. And you're not ready to believe that yet because it would mean forgiving yourself for not being able to save Mom. Ryan stared at his too wise daughter. When did you get so smart? I've always been this smart. You just haven't been ready to listen. Ella closed the laptop gently. I'm not saying you have to meet her tomorrow, but I am saying you should think about it. Really think about it. Not just the scared part of you that wants to hide, but the part that pulled 5 kids from a river and a woman from a landslide. What does that part of you want? That part of him wanted to say yes. That part of him wanted to know if Sophia was okay, if she was happy, if saving her life had led to something good. That part of him wanted to believe that Maya's death hadn't been meaningless, that some cosmic balance existed where loss could be weighed against salvation. But that part was buried deep, and Ryan wasn't sure he could reach it. "I'll think about it," he promised Ella. She nodded, satisfied for now, and headed back inside. Ryan stayed outside, staring at the mountains that rose up around his cabin like walls. He'd chosen this place specifically for its isolation, for the way it kept the world at arm's length. But the world had found him anyway, in the form of a landslide and a woman who refused to stop searching. That evening, after Ella went to bed, Ryan did something he hadn't done in years. He pulled out the box he kept in the back of his closet, the one filled with memories of Maya. There were photos. Maya laughing at their wedding, Maya hiking through Glacier National Park, Maya with her hand on her belly, glowing with pregnancy. There were letters she'd written him during their long-distance phase, before they'd moved in together. There was the ultrasound picture of James, grainy and unclear, but precious beyond measure. Ryan spread the photos out on the kitchen table and let himself remember. Not just the tragedy, but the joy, the love, the life they'd built together before it was taken away. And for the first time in 8 years, he didn't feel only grief. He felt gratitude, too. Gratitude for the time they'd had, for the daughter they'd created, for the memories that no amount of pain could erase. He picked up the photo of Maya at their wedding, her smile bright enough to light the world. "What should I do?" he whispered to her image. "Tell me what to do." The photo didn't answer, of course. But in his mind, he heard Maya's voice as clearly as if she were standing next to him. "Live, Ryan. Stop surviving and start living." He sat there for a long time, surrounded by memories and ghosts, until finally he opened his laptop and typed out a response to Caroline's email. His fingers hovered over the keys for several minutes before he found the right words. "Caroline, I'm glad you're recovering. About meeting Sophia, I need time to think. It's not an easy thing for me, but I'm not saying no. Give me a few weeks. I'll be in touch. Ryan." He hit send before he could second-guess himself, then closed the laptop with shaking hands. It wasn't a yes, but it wasn't a no either. It was, Ryan realized, the first step forward he'd taken in 8 years. That night, he dreamed of Maya. Not the nightmare he usually had, the one where he arrived too late, where he saw her car crushed and smoking and heard her calling his name. This dream was different. They were in their old apartment in Denver, before Ella, before the accident, before everything fell apart. Maya was making breakfast, singing off-key, and Ryan was laughing at her terrible voice. "You're going to be okay," Maya said, turning to look at him. "You're going to figure this out." "I miss you," Ryan said. "I know. I miss you too. But you have to keep living, Ryan. You have to let yourself be happy again, for me, for Ella, for you." "I don't know how." "Yes, you do." Maya smiled, that brilliant smile he'd fallen in love with. "You've always known how. You just forgot for a while." Ryan woke with tears on his face and the sun streaming through his window. For the first time in years, the grief didn't feel crushing. It felt bearable, almost gentle. He got up, made coffee, and was starting breakfast when Ella emerged from her room. "You look different," she observed. "Different how?" "Lighter, like something shifted." Ella came over and hugged him. "You emailed her back, didn't you?" "How do you know?" "Because I know you." Ella pulled back and grinned. "What did you say?" "That I need time, but that I'm thinking about it." "That's good, Dad. That's really good." Ella grabbed plates from the cabinet. "Mom would be proud of you." "Yeah," Ryan said softly. "I think she would." They ate breakfast together, talking about Ella's science project and Ryan's upcoming guiding job and the weather forecast for the week. Normal conversation about normal things. But underneath it, Ryan felt something fundamental had changed. The door he'd spent 8 years keeping locked was finally starting to open. And while that terrified him, it also filled him with something he hadn't felt in a very long time. Hope. Later that morning, after the breakfast dishes were done and Ella was settled with her schoolwork, Ryan found himself standing on the porch, phone in hand, staring at Caroline's number. He told her he needed time, and he did. But there were questions burning in his mind, questions that had been there for 8 years, but that he'd never let himself ask. Before he could talk himself out of it, he dialed the number. Caroline answered on the second ring. "Hello? It's Ryan." There was a pause, then an intake of breath. "Ryan, I didn't expect to hear from you so soon. I shouldn't be calling. I told you I needed time. You can have all the time you need, but I'm glad you called." Ryan gripped the phone tighter. "I have questions. About Sophia. About that day. Ask me anything." "Is she okay? Really okay? Not just physically, but—" He trailed off, not sure how to articulate what he meant. But Caroline understood. "She's more than okay, Ryan. She's thriving. She's a sophomore in high school, straight-A student, captain of her robotics team. She wants to be an engineer like her father was." "Was?" "My husband, Sophia's father, he died 5 years ago. Cancer." Caroline's voice softened. "So I understand something about loss, about trying to move forward when part of you is stuck in the past. I'm sorry." "Thank you. But Ryan, you should know Sophia remembers you. Not clearly, she was only 7, but she remembers the man with the lightning scar who told her to hold on, to keep breathing, to stay strong. She drew pictures of you for years afterward. Her therapist said it was her way of processing the trauma, of turning you into a kind of guardian angel in her mind." Ryan's throat tightened. "I'm not anyone's guardian angel. You are to her. And meeting you, actually meeting you as a real person, I think it would help her. Help both of you, maybe." "How?" "Because right now you're both stuck in that day. You're both defined by it. Meeting face to face might help you both move past it. See each other as people, not just as symbols of the worst day of your lives." Ryan was quiet, processing that. He'd never thought about how that day might have affected Sophia, how she might carry her own scars from it. "There's something else," Caroline continued. "Something I didn't mention in my email because I wanted to tell you directly. Sophia wrote a book. Well, more of a journal. She documented her life after the accident, all the things she got to experience because you saved her. First day of middle school, family vacations, getting her first A in calculus, winning the regional robotics championship. She called it because of you. She wanted you to have it." Ryan had to sit down. His legs simply gave out, and he found himself on the porch steps, phone pressed to his ear, vision blurring with tears. "Ryan, are you there?" "I'm here," he managed. "I'm not trying to pressure you. I'm just telling you that the door is open, whenever you're ready to walk through it. Sophia and I will be here." "I don't deserve this," Ryan whispered. "Maybe not, but you have it anyway. Sometimes grace isn't about deserving." Caroline paused. "My daughter got to live because of the choice you made that day. She got to grow up, to laugh, to dream, to become an extraordinary human being. Your wife and son didn't get that chance, and I'm sorrier than I can express. But Ryan, their loss doesn't diminish the value of what you did. It just makes it more costly. And maybe that cost is exactly why it matters so much." Ryan couldn't speak. He sat on his porch steps, listening to Caroline breathe on the other end of the line, and felt 8 years of locked-away emotion finally begin to crack open. "Take your time," Caroline said gently, "but know that whenever you're ready, we'll be waiting." She hung up, leaving Ryan alone with his thoughts and the Montana wilderness stretching out before him. Inside, through the window, he could see Ella bent over her homework, her blonde hair falling across her face in a way that was painfully reminiscent of Maya, his daughter. His reason for getting up every morning, for putting one foot in front of the other, for surviving when surviving felt impossible. And suddenly, sitting there on those porch steps, Ryan understood what Maya's voice in his dream had been trying to tell him. Surviving wasn't enough anymore. Not for him, and not for Ella. It was time to start living again. 2 weeks passed before Ryan made his decision, and when he did, it came not from some grand epiphany, but from a simple moment on an ordinary Tuesday afternoon. He and Ella were working in the garden behind the cabin, preparing the soil for spring planting. The March sun was warm on their backs, and the smell of thawing earth filled the air with the promise of renewal. Ella was chattering about her science project, about how the tomato plants with mineral-enriched soil had grown twice as fast as the control group when she suddenly stopped mid-sentence. "Dad, do you remember the last time we talked about Mom's garden?" Ryan looked up from the row he was tilling. "What do you mean?" "Her garden. At the old house in Denver. You told me once that she grew tomatoes every summer, that she had this whole system for getting them to ripen perfectly." Ella wiped dirt from her hands. "I realized today that my science project is basically trying to do what she did. I'm trying to understand what made her garden so special." Ryan's chest tightened. He hadn't made that connection, but of course Ella had. His daughter was always finding ways to keep Maya's memory alive, to connect herself to the mother she barely remembered. "She did have a system," Ryan said quietly. "She'd talk to the plants, said they grew better when they knew someone cared about them." "Did it work?" "Every time." Ryan smiled at the memory. "We had more tomatoes than we knew what to do with. She'd make sauce and salsa and give jars to all the neighbors." "I wish I could remember that." Ella's voice was wistful. "I have little flashes, images really, but not full memories, just impressions of warmth and her voice singing. She sang to you every night, off-key lullabies that would make dogs howl." Ella laughed. "That's where I get it from then, my terrible singing voice." They worked in comfortable silence for a while, the kind of silence that exists between people who know each other well enough that words aren't always necessary. But Ryan's mind was churning, processing something that had been building since his phone call with Caroline. Ella deserved more than impressions and secondhand stories. She deserved to know her mother, to understand the woman Maya had been. And if Ryan was honest with himself, he needed that too. He needed to remember Maya as a whole person, not just as the tragedy that defined the worst day of his life. Maybe meeting Sophia would help with that. Maybe seeing the life he'd saved, the future he'd made possible, would help him reconcile the impossible math of that day, 5 lives saved against 2 lost. Maybe it would help him believe that Maya's death hadn't been meaningless, that his choice had mattered. "Elle," Ryan said suddenly, "how do you feel about taking a trip?" Ella looked up, dirt smudged on her cheek. "What kind of trip?" "To San Francisco, to meet Caroline and Sophia." His daughter's eyes went wide. "Really? You mean it?" "I think so, if you want to." "If I want to?" Ella dropped her trowel and threw her arms around him. "Dad, yes, of course I want to." Ryan held his daughter and felt the last of his resistance crumble. This wasn't just about him anymore. It wasn't just about his guilt or his grief or his need to hide from the past. It was about Ella too, about giving her a chance to be part of something bigger than their isolated mountain existence. "I'll email Caroline tonight," he said. "See if they're free in a couple weeks." "A couple weeks?" Ella pulled back. "Why so long?" "Because I need time to prepare. And because we need to figure out logistics, plane tickets, hotel, all of that." "We've never flown anywhere." Ella's excitement was palpable. "I've never even been on a plane." "I know, that's part of why we need time." Ryan smiled despite the anxiety churning in his gut. "This is a big deal, Elle. Meeting Sophia, seeing the life she's built. I need to be ready for it." "You're already ready, Dad. You've been ready for 8 years. You just didn't know it." That evening, after Ella had gone to bed practically vibrating with excitement, Ryan sat down at his laptop and composed an email to Caroline. He wrote and deleted a dozen versions before settling on something simple. "Caroline, I've decided I'm ready to meet Sophia. If the offer still stands, Ella and I could come to San Francisco in 2 weeks. Let me know if that works for you. Ryan." He hit send and immediately wanted to take it back. But within 10 minutes, Caroline had responded, "Ryan, the offer absolutely still stands. 2 weeks is perfect. Sophia will be over the moon. I'll arrange everything. Hotel, transportation from the airport, whatever you need. Just send me your flight information when you have it. And Ryan, thank you. Thank you. This means more than you know." Caroline Ryan stared at the email, at those simple words that somehow carried the weight of 8 years of searching, of hoping, of waiting. He'd spent so long running from this moment, and now that it was here, he felt strangely calm. Maybe Ella was right. Maybe he had been ready all along. The next 2 weeks passed in a blur of preparation. Ryan had to arrange coverage for his upcoming guide jobs, which meant calling in favors and dealing with disappointed clients. Ella threw herself into researching San Francisco, making lists of places she wanted to visit and facts she wanted to share with Sophia. They went to Kalispell to buy new clothes. Their Montana wardrobe of flannel and fleece wasn't going to cut it in the city, and Ryan found himself standing in a department store, completely overwhelmed by the sheer number of choices. "You look terrified," the saleswoman observed kindly. She was older, grandmotherly, with laugh lines around her eyes. "I haven't bought dress clothes in 8 years," Ryan admitted. "Special occasion?" "You could say that. We're going to San Francisco to meet someone important." The woman smiled. "Well then, let's make sure you make a good impression." She helped him pick out slacks, a button-down shirt, and a blazer that made him look almost civilized. For Ella, they found a sundress that made her look older than 12, more teenager than child. When they got home and Ella tried it on, showing off in front of the mirror, Ryan felt a pang of loss so sharp it took his breath away. Maya should be here for this. She should be the one taking their daughter shopping, teaching her about makeup and boys and all the things Ryan had no idea how to navigate. She should be here to see Ella growing up into this remarkable young woman, but she wasn't, and Ryan had to be enough. "You look beautiful, Elle," he said, his voice rough. Ella turned from the mirror and saw the expression on his face. She came over and hugged him tight. "She'd be proud of us, Dad, for doing this, for being brave." "When did you become the parent?" Ryan asked. "About 8 years ago," Ella said matter-of-factly. "Someone had to keep us together." Ryan laughed despite the tears stinging his eyes. "I love you, kiddo." "Love you too, Dad." The night before their flight, Ryan couldn't sleep. He lay in bed, staring at the ceiling, his mind racing with scenarios and possibilities. What would he say to Sophia? How did you thank someone for being alive? How did you explain that saving her life had cost him everything, but that you'd make the same choice again? Around 3 in the morning, he gave up on sleep and went to sit on the porch. The Montana night was clear and cold, the stars scattered across the sky like diamonds on black velvet. Maya had loved nights like this. She'd drag him outside even in the dead of winter, just to look at the stars and talk about how small they were in the grand scheme of things. "I'm scared," Ryan admitted to the darkness, to Maya's ghost, to whoever might be listening. "I'm scared that meeting Sophia will make it all real again, that I'll have to face what I did, what I lost, and it'll break me all over again." The wind whispered through the pines, carrying no answers, just the familiar sounds of the wilderness Ryan had called home for so long. "But I'm going anyway," he continued, "because Ella needs this, because maybe I need this too. Because you'd tell me to stop hiding and start living, and I'm finally ready to listen." A shooting star streaked across the sky, brief and brilliant. Ryan chose to take it as a sign, though he wasn't sure from whom or of what. Maybe it didn't matter. Maybe sometimes you just had to have faith that the universe was paying attention, even when it felt like you were shouting into the void. He went back inside, checked on Ella one last time. She was sprawled across her bed, lost in dreams, and managed to catch a few hours of sleep before dawn. The morning of their flight was chaos. Ella was so excited she could barely eat breakfast, and Ryan triple-checked their bags approximately 17 times to make sure they had everything. By the time they loaded into the truck for the drive to the airport, his nerves were frayed and his stomach was in knots. "Dad, you need to breathe," Ella said from the passenger seat. "You look like you're about to jump out of the truck." "I'm fine." "You're white-knuckling the steering wheel." Ryan glanced down and realized she was right. He forced his hands to relax. "I just want everything to go smoothly." "It will. And if it doesn't, we'll figure it out. We always do." They made it to the airport with time to spare. Ryan hadn't flown since before Ella was born, and he'd forgotten how overwhelming airports could be. The crowds, the noise, the barely controlled chaos of hundreds of people trying to get somewhere else. But Ella took to it with the enthusiasm of someone experiencing everything for the first time, asking questions and observing details that Ryan would have missed. Security was a nightmare. Ryan had to explain the knife he'd forgotten was in his carry-on, and Ella's backpack got flagged because her rock collection apparently looked suspicious on the X-ray. By the time they made it to their gate, Ryan was sweating and seriously reconsidering this entire plan. "This is amazing," Ella breathed, pressing her face against the window to watch planes taking off and landing. Look how big they are up close. Her wonder was infectious. Ryan found himself relaxing slightly, letting Ella's excitement override his anxiety. When their flight was called and they boarded, Ella insisted on the window seat, and she spent the entire takeoff with her face glued to the glass, gasping at the way the ground fell away beneath them. Dad, look! You can see the mountains! You can see everything! Ryan looked past her at the familiar peaks of the Rockies, now reduced to wrinkles on the landscape. From up here, his cabin was invisible, just one tiny speck in an endless wilderness. The life he'd built for himself and Ella, the careful, controlled, isolated life, looked suddenly very small. Maybe that's what he needed. Perspective. Distance. A reminder that the world was bigger than his grief, bigger than his guilt, bigger than the walls he'd built to keep everyone out. The flight was smooth, and before Ryan was ready, they were descending into San Francisco. The city sprawled below them, a dense maze of buildings and bridges and water, so different from the open spaces of Montana that Ryan felt a moment of vertigo that had nothing to do with the altitude. They collected their bags, one small suitcase each, because Ryan traveled light out of habit, and made their way to the arrivals area. Caroline had said she'd send a car, and sure enough, there was a man in a black suit holding a sign that read, "Hail." "That's us," Ryan said, guiding Ella toward him. The driver was professional and efficient, loading their bags and ushering them into a sleek black sedan that probably cost more than Ryan's truck. As they pulled away from the airport and merged into traffic, Ella pressed her face to the window again, trying to take in everything at once. "There are so many people," she marveled, "and so many cars. How does anyone get anywhere?" "Very slowly," the driver said with a smile. "Welcome to San Francisco." The drive to the hotel took nearly an hour thanks to traffic. Ryan spent most of it staring out the window, watching the city roll past. Everything felt foreign: the architecture, the density, the sheer number of people crammed into every available space. He'd grown so used to silence and solitude that the constant noise of the city felt like an assault on his senses. But Ella loved it. She pointed out landmarks she recognized from her research, asked the driver questions about the best places to eat, and generally radiated excitement. Watching her, Ryan realized how much he'd sheltered her, how small her world had been. This trip wasn't just about meeting Sophia. It was about showing Ella that there was life beyond their mountain, possibilities beyond their isolated existence. The hotel Caroline had arranged was in Union Square, a tall, elegant building that made Ryan feel wildly out of place in his new blazer and slacks. The lobby was all marble and gold fixtures, with staff who moved with practiced efficiency. "Mr. Hale," the desk clerk said warmly. "Welcome. Ms. Pierce has arranged for you to have a suite on the 22nd floor. I hope you'll find everything to your satisfaction." A suite? Ryan had been expecting a basic room, maybe 2 beds. Instead, they were shown to a 2-bedroom suite with floor-to-ceiling windows that overlooked the city. Ella immediately ran to the windows, gasping at the view. "Dad, you can see everything. The buildings go on forever." But before he could spiral too far into that thought, his phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. "Ryan, it's Caroline. I hope you and Ella arrived safely. If you're up for it, Sophia and I would love to meet you for lunch tomorrow. No pressure. I know you must be exhausted from travel. Let me know what works for you." Ryan stared at the message for a long moment before responding. "We're here. Lunch tomorrow sounds good. Where and when?" The reply came almost immediately. "There's a cafe near your hotel called Rosewood. It's quiet, casual. Does 1 p.m. work?" "That works. See you then." Ryan set down his phone and realized his hands were shaking. This was really happening. Tomorrow, he was going to meet Sophia. Tomorrow, he was going to face the past he'd been running from for 8 years. "Dad?" Ella had turned from the window and was watching him with concern. "You okay?" "Yeah, we're meeting them tomorrow. Lunch at 1. Ella's face lit up. "Really? Tomorrow? That's so soon." "Too soon," Ryan muttered. "No such thing." Ella came over and took his hand. "This is good, Dad. This is the right thing." "I hope you're right." They spent the rest of the day exploring the area around the hotel. Ella wanted to see everything: the cable cars, the shops, the street performers who dotted every corner. Ryan followed in a daze, his mind already on tomorrow, on the conversation he'd have to have, on the girl he'd have to face. That night, he barely slept. He kept imagining scenarios, conversations, reactions. What if Sophia resented him? What if meeting him brought back trauma she'd worked years to overcome? What if seeing her face reminded him so viscerally of that day that he couldn't handle it? Around dawn, he gave up on sleep and went to sit by the window. The city was already waking up, cars appearing on the streets, lights flickering on in buildings. Somewhere out there, Sophia was also waking up, also preparing for this meeting. Was she nervous too? Did she have expectations? Hope? Fear? Ryan didn't know. He couldn't know. All he could do was show up and be honest. At noon, he and Ella dressed carefully. Ella put on her new sundress and spent 20 minutes fussing with her hair before declaring it hopeless. Ryan wore his new shirt and blazer, feeling like a fraud playing dress-up. They looked at each other in the mirror, this father and daughter who were about to step into something that might change everything. "We can do this," Ella said firmly. "We can do this," Ryan echoed, trying to believe it. The cafe was only 3 blocks from the hotel. Ryan had Googled it the night before. Rosewood was small and intimate, with good reviews and a reputation for quiet atmosphere. Perfect for a conversation that was going to be anything but casual. They arrived 5 minutes early. Ryan gave his name to the hostess, who smiled warmly and said, "Ms. Pierce's party. She's already here. Right this way." His heart was pounding so hard he could hear it in his ears. Ella squeezed his hand once, hard, and then they were walking through the cafe, weaving between tables, and there they were. Caroline sat at a corner table, looking much better than she had 2 weeks ago. The bruises had faded, and though she still moved carefully, she looked healthy and put together in a way that spoke of recovery and resilience. But it was the girl sitting across from her who made Ryan stop breathing. Sophia was 15, tall and slender with dark hair like her mother's, and eyes that were almost startlingly intelligent. She wore a robotics team t-shirt and jeans, and she was fidgeting with a napkin, tearing it into tiny pieces without seeming to realize she was doing it. When she looked up and saw Ryan, everything else in the cafe seemed to fade away. For a long moment, they just stared at each other across the distance of 8 years and 1,000 what-ifs. Ryan saw the little girl he'd pulled from the water superimposed over the teenager she'd become. He saw her terrified eyes, felt her nails digging into his arm, heard her gasping breaths as he'd carried her to shore. And then Sophia stood up, and Ryan realized she was crying. "It's you," she whispered. "It's really you." She crossed the space between them in 3 long strides and threw her arms around him. Ryan stood frozen for a second, completely unprepared for this, before his instincts kicked in and he hugged her back. "It's okay," he heard himself say, the same words he'd said to her 8 years ago. "You're okay. I've got you." Sophia was sobbing against his chest, her whole body shaking, and Ryan felt his own tears start to fall. All the walls he'd built, all the careful control he'd maintained crumbled in the face of this girl's raw emotion. "Thank you," Sophia choked out. "Thank you for saving me. Thank you for being alive. Thank you for being real." Ryan couldn't speak. He just held her and let her cry, let himself cry, while Caroline and Ella watched with their own tears streaming down their faces. Finally, Sophia pulled back, wiping her eyes and laughing shakily. "Sorry, I promised myself I wouldn't do that. I was going to be cool and composed." "You're perfect," Ryan managed to say. "You're absolutely perfect." They sat down, Sophia insisting that Ryan sit next to her, and for a few minutes everyone just tried to compose themselves. The waiter brought water and menus, taking in the emotional scene with practiced discretion. "Sophia's been counting down the days," Caroline said softly. "She's had your arrival date circled on her calendar for 2 weeks." "I couldn't believe it when Mom told me she'd found you," Sophia said. She was still clutching Ryan's hand like she was afraid he'd disappear if she let go. "After so many years of looking, of wondering, I'd almost given up hope." "I didn't know anyone was looking," Ryan admitted. "I never stopped." Sophia's voice was fierce. "You saved my life. You pulled me out of that bus when I couldn't breathe, when the water was filling up and I thought I was going to die. You told me to hold on, to stay strong. Do you remember?" "I remember." Ryan's throat was tight. You had blood on your arm, from where I scratched you. I felt so bad about that afterward. Sophia touched the scar on his arm gently, tracing the line. I did this. You did what you had to do to survive. That's nothing to feel bad about. Mom said you disappeared after that day, that no one could find you. Why? Ryan glanced at Ella, who nodded encouragingly. He took a deep breath and told them the truth. My wife was in an accident that same day. The same drunk driver who hit your bus hit her car. She was pregnant with our son. They both died while I was pulling you and the other kids from the water. He paused, letting that sink in. I couldn't stay after that. Couldn't face the reminder of what I'd lost. So I left. Changed my name, moved to Montana, tried to forget. The table was silent. Sophia's face had gone pale, and fresh tears were rolling down her cheeks. Oh my God, she whispered. I didn't know. Mom never told me you'd lost someone that day. I didn't know the details, Caroline said quietly. Not until the landslide when we talked. I knew there'd been multiple casualties, but I never connected them to you. It's not your fault, Ryan said quickly. None of it is anyone's fault except the drunk driver's. But you've been carrying this guilt for 8 years, Sophia said, thinking that saving me cost you your family. It did cost me my family. No. Sophia's voice was sharp, almost angry. The drunk driver cost you your family. You didn't choose between us and them. You chose to help people who were drowning. That's not the same thing. Sophia's right, Caroline added. You couldn't have saved both. The bus and the car accident happened simultaneously on opposite sides of the bridge. You were one person in an impossible situation. Ryan knew they were right. Logically, intellectually, he'd always known it. But hearing it from Sophia, from the girl whose life represented the cost of his choice, somehow made it real in a way it had never been before. I've spent 8 years trying to figure out if saving you was worth losing them, Ryan admitted. I still don't know the answer. It wasn't worth it, Sophia said immediately. Of course it wasn't worth it. How could my life be worth your wife and son? That math doesn't work. Ryan blinked, surprised by her vehemence. But that's not the right question, Sophia continued. The right question is, if you could go back, knowing what you know now, would you make a different choice? Would you drive past that bus? Ryan opened his mouth to answer, then closed it. He thought about those 5 kids in the water, about their terror, their desperation, their absolute need for someone to help them. He thought about Sophia's face, about the way she'd looked at him with complete trust as he'd pulled her to safety. No, he said finally. I couldn't drive past. Even knowing what it would cost, I couldn't leave you all to drown. That's who you are, Sophia said. That's why we've been looking for you. Not because we need a hero or want to make you into something you're not, but because we wanted to thank the person who made an impossible choice and has been suffering for it ever since. Ella, who'd been quiet through this entire exchange, finally spoke up. My mom would have wanted him to save you. She was a paramedic too before I was born. She believed in helping people. And I think she'd be sad that Dad spent 8 years punishing himself for being exactly who she fell in love with. Ryan looked at his daughter, this wise soul in a 12-year-old body, and felt something shift in his chest. Ella's right, he said softly. Maya would have been angry if I'd driven past that bus. She would have made the same choice I did. Tell us about her, Caroline said gently. About Maya. We should know about the woman who was lost that day. So Ryan did. For the first time in 8 years, he talked about Maya to people who weren't Ella. He told them about how they'd met during a training exercise, how she'd outperformed every man in their unit, and then bought them all beer to celebrate. He told them about her terrible singing and her incredible garden and the way she'd light up when she talked about the baby. She wanted to name him James, Ryan said, after my father. She'd already decorated the nursery, already bought clothes in sizes he'd need for the first year. She was so ready to be a mom. She is a mom, Ella said. Even though she's gone, she's still my mom. She'll always be my mom. Sophia reached across the table and took Ella's hand. I lost my dad 5 years ago to cancer. It's not the same as what you went through, but I understand something about missing a parent, about feeling like there's this hole in your life that nothing can fill. Does it get easier? Ella asked. It gets different, Sophia said honestly. Not easier, really, but you learn to carry it better. You learn that they're part of you, and as long as you remember them, they're not really gone. The two girls looked at each other, and Ryan saw understanding pass between them. These two kids, linked by tragedy and loss, finding connection in their shared experience. Sophia made something for you, Caroline said. We brought it with us. Sophia reached into the bag beside her chair and pulled out a leather-bound journal. She handed it to Ryan with trembling hands. It's the book I told you about, Caroline explained. The one Sophia made documenting her life after the accident. Ryan opened the journal carefully. The first page had a title in neat handwriting, Because of You, a Life Saved. Below it was a drawing, done with obvious skill, of a man pulling a girl from water. The man had a scar on his arm, rendered in careful detail. Ryan's vision blurred as he turned the pages. Each one documented a moment from Sophia's life. Her first day back at school after the accident, complete with a photo and a paragraph about how scared she'd been. Her 10th birthday party. The day she joined the robotics team. Her father's last good day before the cancer took him. Her acceptance into advanced placement classes. Her team winning the regional robotics competition. Every page ended with the same phrase, I got to experience this because of you. I wanted you to see, Sophia said quietly. I wanted you to know that your choice, the impossible choice you made, it led to this. It led to all of this. My life, my experiences, the person I became. Ryan couldn't speak. He just kept turning pages, seeing this girl's life unfold in words and pictures and careful observations, seeing the future he'd made possible. Does it help? Sophia asked. Seeing this? Does it make the cost feel less impossible? I don't know, Ryan said honestly. But it helps me understand that it wasn't meaningless, that something good came from that terrible day. Something incredible came from it, Caroline said. Look at my daughter. Look at what she's become, what she's going to become. She wants to be an engineer, Ryan. She wants to design systems that help people, that make the world better. And she can do that because you gave her the chance to grow up. Ryan closed the journal and held it against his chest. Thank you, he whispered. Thank you for this. No, thank you. Sophia took his hand again. Thank you for saving me. Thank you for being willing to meet me, even though I know it was hard. Thank you for being real, not just a story I told myself. They ordered lunch, though Ryan wasn't sure any of them could actually eat. The conversation flowed more easily now, moving from the heavy territory of the past to lighter topics. Sophia and Ella discovered a shared love of science and spent 20 minutes enthusiastically discussing experiments and theories while Ryan and Caroline watched with matching expressions of bemusement. They're good together, Caroline observed. Different temperaments, but they click. Ella needs that, Ryan said. She's so isolated in Montana. No friends nearby, no one her age to talk to. This, having someone who understands, who's been through loss, it's good for her. It's good for Sophia, too. She tends to internalize things, keep her feelings locked up. Meeting you, meeting Ella, it's helping her process what she's carried for so long. Ryan watched his daughter laugh at something Sophia said, watched her face light up with genuine joy, and felt another piece of his carefully constructed isolation crack apart. What's your life like in Montana? Sophia asked suddenly, turning her attention back to Ryan. Mom said you live in a cabin you built yourself. I do. It's not much. 1,200 square feet, solar power, well water. But it's home. That sounds amazing, Sophia said wistfully. I've always wanted to see real wilderness. Montana must be incredible. It is, Ella chimed in. We have forests and mountains and lakes. In the summer, Dad takes tourists on hiking trips. Sometimes we see bears and elk, and once we saw a mountain lion. A mountain lion? Sophia's eyes went wide. Weren't you scared? Terrified, Ella admitted, but Dad knew what to do. He always knows what to do in the wilderness. You should visit, Ryan heard himself say before he could think better of it. Both of you, come see Montana. See what our life is like. Caroline and Sophia exchanged glances. Really? Caroline asked. You'd be okay with that? I think so. Yeah, if you want to. We'd love to, Sophia said immediately. When? Summer's best, late June or early July, before the fire season starts. Ryan couldn't believe he was doing this, inviting people into his sanctuary, but it felt right. There's not much to do there. No internet, spotty cell service. But if you want to see wilderness, I can show you wilderness. I don't care about internet, Sophia said. I just want to see where you live, to understand your life the way you're understanding mine. They talked through the afternoon, through lunch and into coffee, covering 8 years of separation in a few hours of conversation. Ryan learned about Sophia's robotics projects, her dreams of studying at MIT, her love of hiking even though she'd never done any real wilderness trekking. Caroline talked about her company. She'd started a tech firm focused on educational software after her husband died, and about how the business had been her salvation during the worst of her grief. Eventually, the cafe staff started giving them looks that suggested they'd overstayed their welcome. They paid the bill, Caroline insisted, and walked out into the San Francisco afternoon. We have tickets to the California Academy of Sciences tomorrow, Caroline said. If you and Ella would like to join us? Ryan looked at Ella, who was practically bouncing with excitement. We'd love to, he said. They made plans to meet at the museum the next morning, and then Caroline and Sophia headed to their car. But before they left, Sophia turned back and hugged Ryan one more time. I'm so glad I finally met you, she said. I'm so glad you're real. Me too, Ryan said, and realized he meant it. He and Ella walked back to the hotel in companionable silence. The city that had seemed so overwhelming yesterday now felt almost friendly, full of possibility instead of threat. That was good, wasn't it? Ella finally said. It was better than good. It was... Ryan trailed off, searching for the right word. It was healing. Do you still think saving her wasn't worth it? Ryan thought about Sophia's journal, about the pages of life documented because he'd made an impossible choice. He thought about her intelligence, her passion, her dreams of making the world better. He thought about the person she was and the person she would become. No, he said slowly. It's not about worth. It's about both things being true at once. Saving her was the right choice, and losing Maya and James was devastating. Those things don't cancel each other out. They just exist together. That's very philosophical, Dad. I have a very philosophical daughter. I'm learning from her. They spent the evening in the hotel, Ella poring over Sophia's journal while Ryan sat by the window and watched the city lights come on one by one. His phone buzzed with a text from Caroline. Thank you for today. Sophia hasn't stopped talking about you and Ella. I think this meeting meant as much to her as it did to you. Ryan typed back, Thank you for finding me, for not giving up. I would never give up. You saved my daughter. That's not something a mother forgets. Ryan set down his phone and closed his eyes. For the first time in 8 years, when he thought about that day, about the bus and the water and the choice he'd made, he didn't feel only guilt and grief. He felt something else, too. Peace. Maybe not complete peace, not yet, but the beginning of it, the possibility of it. And that was more than he dared hope for. The California Academy of Sciences was unlike anything Ella had ever seen. The living roof alone, with its rolling hills covered in native plants, had her spinning in circles trying to take it all in at once. Ryan stood back and watched his daughter's wonder, feeling something in his chest loosen with each excited exclamation she made. Caroline and Sophia were waiting for them at the entrance, and the easy warmth of their greeting made it feel like they'd known each other for years instead of just one day. Sophia immediately linked arms with Ella and started explaining all the exhibits they had to see, while Caroline fell into step beside Ryan. You look more relaxed than yesterday, she observed. I slept, Ryan admitted. First real sleep in weeks, maybe years. Funny how facing the thing you've been running from can do that. Caroline smiled at him. How are you really feeling about all of this? Ryan watched Sophia and Ella disappear into the rainforest dome, their voices echoing back in excited chatter. Overwhelmed, grateful, confused. All of it at once. That sounds about right. Caroline adjusted the strap of her bag. Can I tell you something? Yesterday, after we dropped you off, Sophia cried for an hour. Happy tears, she kept saying, but also grief tears. Meeting you made you real, and making you real meant acknowledging what you lost that day, what your choice cost you. She shouldn't carry that burden. She's carried it for 8 years, Ryan. At least now she can share it with someone who understands. Caroline paused at the entrance to the rainforest exhibit. That's what I think you both needed. Not absolution or forgiveness, but someone who knows the weight of that day and can help carry it. They found the girls on the suspended walkway through the rainforest canopy, their heads bent together as they studied something on Sophia's phone. When they looked up and saw Ryan and Caroline, their faces were serious. "We have an idea," Ella announced. "That sounds dangerous," Ryan said, but he was smiling. "We want to do a project together," Sophia explained. "A long-term research study comparing ecosystem health in urban versus wilderness environments. I'd do the San Francisco data collection, Ella would handle Montana, and we'd collaborate remotely to analyze the results." "It could be published," Ella added eagerly. "Real scientific research, and it would give us a reason to stay in touch, to video chat regularly." Ryan looked at Caroline, who seemed equally surprised by the proposal. "That's actually a solid idea," Caroline said slowly. "Ambitious, but solid." "It would take at least a year to gather meaningful data," Sophia said, "which means we'd have to visit each other's sites. I'd need to come to Montana to establish baseline measurements, and Ella would need to come to San Francisco." "You two have really thought this through," Ryan observed. "We talked about it last night," Ella admitted. "After I read Sophia's journal, we were texting until midnight." "You were texting? How were you texting?" Ryan turned to his daughter. "You don't have a phone." Ella had the grace to look sheepish. "I may have used the hotel Wi-Fi and the tablet you got me for schoolwork. Sorry?" Ryan shook his head, but he couldn't muster any real anger. The sight of Ella connecting with someone her own age, forming a genuine friendship, was worth a bent rule or two. They spent the rest of the morning exploring the museum. Sophia and Ella were inseparable, moving through exhibits with the kind of synchronized enthusiasm that comes from shared interests and complementary personalities. Sophia was more analytical, breaking down the science behind each display, while Ella was more intuitive, asking questions about interconnections and broader implications. Watching them together, Ryan felt a pang of guilt. He'd been so focused on protecting Ella from the pain of the past that he'd isolated her from the possibilities of the present. She needed this. Friendship, intellectual stimulation, connection with someone who understood loss but hadn't been defined by it. "They're good for each other," Caroline said, echoing his thoughts. "Ella's never had this. A real friend." "Neither has Sophia, really. She has school friends, but no one she can talk to about the big things. The scary things." Caroline watched her daughter laugh at something Ella said. "She's been seeing a therapist since the accident. The therapist told me that Sophia has survivor's guilt, that she feels like she doesn't deserve her life because other people died that day." "5 people died," Ryan said quietly. "The bus driver and 4 other motorists who got caught in the accident. I looked it up once, after. I needed to know the full cost. Sophia knows those numbers too. She's carried them with her for 8 years, thinking she somehow caused those deaths by surviving." Caroline's voice was thick with emotion. "Meeting you, seeing that you don't blame her, that you made the choice to save her consciously and would make it again, I think it's helping her let go of that guilt." "I don't blame her. I never blamed any of you." "But you blamed yourself." "That's different." "Is it?" Caroline challenged gently. "You carry guilt for surviving when your wife didn't, for choosing to save others when you couldn't save her. Sophia carries guilt for being saved when others died. That sounds pretty similar to me." Ryan didn't have an answer for that. They walked in silence for a while, following the girls through the aquarium exhibits, watching them point out fish and debate scientific names. At lunch, they gathered at the museum cafe, and Ryan found himself drawn into the conversation despite his usual reticence. Sophia was asking him about wilderness survival skills, about what it took to really thrive in isolated environments, and he found himself sharing stories from his years as a guide. "The most important thing isn't knowledge," he told her. "It's respect. Respect for the land, for the weather, for the animals. People who go into wilderness thinking they can conquer it usually end up in trouble. You have to work with nature, not against it." "That's how I think about engineering," Sophia said thoughtfully. "Good design works with human behavior and environmental constraints, not against them. It's the same principle." "Exactly," Ryan agreed. "It's about understanding systems and finding your place in them." "You should teach," Caroline said suddenly. You have a gift for explaining things in a way that makes sense. I do teach. When I guide. I mean really teach. Wilderness survival courses maybe, or emergency response training. You have knowledge that people need, and you're clearly good at sharing it. Ryan shifted uncomfortably. I don't know about that. Why not? Ella challenged. You taught me everything I know about surviving in the wilderness. You could teach other people too. It's complicated. Everything's complicated with you, Dad. Ella's tone was affectionate but pointed. Sometimes you just have to do things even when they're complicated. After lunch, they visited the planetarium, sitting in the dark while a show about the cosmos played overhead. Ryan found himself sitting between Caroline and Ella, with Sophia on Caroline's other side, and something about the configuration felt right. Like a family, almost, though Ryan shied away from that thought as soon as it formed. But when Caroline's hand found his in the darkness, squeezing once before letting go, Ryan didn't pull away. He accepted the gesture for what it was: connection, comfort, the simple human need to not be alone. The show ended and they emerged into the afternoon light, blinking and slightly dazed. Sophia and Ella immediately launched into an excited discussion about exoplanets and the possibility of extraterrestrial life, while Ryan and Caroline hung back. Thank you for today, Caroline said, for being here, for giving Sophia this gift. I think she's giving me the gift, Ryan said honestly. Seeing her happy, seeing her thriving, it helps, more than I expected it to. Does it make the cost feel worth it? Ryan thought about that, really thought about it. No, he said finally, it doesn't make it worth it. Nothing could make losing Maya and James worth it, but it makes the choice feel less impossible. It helps me understand that good came from tragedy, even if the tragedy shouldn't have happened in the first place. Caroline nodded slowly. That's as much as anyone can ask for, meaning not justification. They spent the rest of the afternoon wandering the museum, and by the time they emerged into the San Francisco evening, Ryan felt lighter than he had in years. They walked to a nearby restaurant for dinner, and the conversation flowed easily over pasta and wine, sparkling cider for the girls, who were too caught up in their own discussion to pay much attention to the adults. I have a confession, Caroline said during a lull in the conversation. When I told you I'd been searching for 8 years, I didn't tell you the full story. Ryan set down his fork. What do you mean? I didn't just hire investigators. I became obsessed. Caroline's voice was quiet, almost ashamed. I spent hundreds of thousands of dollars. I tracked down every male paramedic who'd worked in Colorado in the 5 years before the accident. I attended conferences, joined support groups, did everything I could to find you. My husband, David, he worried I was losing myself in the search. But you never stopped. Never. Even after David got sick, even after he died, I kept looking because I needed to know you were okay. I needed to thank you. She paused, struggling for words. I needed to believe that heroes were real, I think. That people who make sacrifices for strangers exist outside of movies. I'm not a hero, Caroline. You are to me. You are to Sophia. And maybe that's enough. She met his eyes across the table. I'm not saying what I did was healthy. My therapist certainly didn't think so, but I can't regret it because it led to finding you. It led to this. Ryan looked around the table, at Ella and Sophia, heads together over a napkin Sophia was using to sketch out their research proposal, at Caroline with her open, honest face, at this makeshift family that had formed from tragedy and time. I'm glad you found me, he said. I didn't think I would be, but I am. Caroline's eyes filled with tears. That means everything. They finished dinner and walked back toward the hotel, the girls still chattering about their project. When they reached the entrance, Sophia turned to Ryan with a hopeful expression. Can we do this again tomorrow? There's so much of the city I want to show Ella. Ryan glanced at Caroline, who nodded. We're here for 3 more days, he said. We'd love to spend them with you. The next 3 days passed in a blur of activity. Sophia insisted on showing them everything: the Golden Gate Bridge, Alcatraz, the sea lions at Pier 39, hidden bookshops in North Beach, dim sum in Chinatown. They rode cable cars and walked until Ryan's feet ached, and Ella collapsed into bed each night exhausted and happy. But it was the quiet moments Ryan treasured most: coffee with Caroline while the girls explored a museum gift shop, a conversation about grief and survival that lasted until dawn. The way Sophia started calling him Ryan instead of Mr. Hale, the way she'd grab his arm when she wanted to show him something, the easy affection that suggested he was becoming something like family to her. And there were moments between him and Caroline too. Moments that felt like something more than friendship, but less than romance. A gentle exploration of possibility that neither of them rushed. A hand on his back as they walked through a crowded street, her laughter at one of his stories about disastrous guiding trips. The way she looked at him when she thought he wasn't paying attention, like she was seeing something precious and fragile that needed protecting. On their last night in San Francisco, Caroline invited them to her house for dinner. It was in Pacific Heights, a beautiful Victorian that spoke of old money and careful preservation. Sophia gave them a tour while Caroline cooked, showing off her robotics workspace in the converted attic and her father's study, which she'd kept exactly as he'd left it. "I come in here sometimes when I'm working on a hard problem," Sophia admitted, running her hand over David's desk. "I pretend he's still here, still able to help me figure things out." "What was he like?" Ella asked softly. "Smart, patient, funny in a dad joke kind of way." Sophia smiled at the memories. "He taught me to love building things, to see problems as puzzles waiting to be solved. When he got sick, he made me promise I wouldn't stop learning, wouldn't stop creating. He said every day was a gift, and the best way to honor that gift was to do something meaningful with it." Ryan felt his throat tighten. "He sounds like a good man." "He was. I miss him every day." Sophia looked at Ryan, then at Ella. "But I think he'd like you guys. He always said the best families are the ones we choose, not the ones we're born into." Over dinner, Caroline had made lasagna, admitting with a laugh that it was the only thing she knew how to cook well. The conversation turned to the future. "We've been thinking about the Montana trip," Caroline said. "Sophia has break in July. Would that work for you?" "July's perfect," Ryan said. "Peak season for wildflowers, and the weather's usually good." "We could do some of the research while we're there," Sophia suggested. "Set up the measurement protocols, establish baseline data." "And I could finally teach you proper wilderness skills," Ryan added. "Though fair warning, it's not glamorous. Lots of dirt and early mornings." "I can handle dirt and early mornings," Sophia said confidently. "She really can't," Caroline interjected with a smile. "But she'll try." They talked late into the evening, making plans and promises. Sophia and Ella would start their research project immediately, with regular video calls to coordinate. Caroline would look into developing a wilderness survival curriculum that Ryan could potentially teach, maybe online at first, then in person. And in July, they'd all reunite in Montana, where Ryan would show them the world he'd built for himself and Ella. "I can't believe this is happening," Ella said as they were getting ready to leave. 3 weeks ago, we were just Dad and me in our cabin. Now we have—" She gestured at Caroline and Sophia. "This, whatever this is." "Family," Sophia said immediately. "This is family." The word hung in the air, weighted with meaning. Ryan looked at Caroline, expecting her to correct it, to clarify that they were friends, that this was still new and undefined, but she just smiled. "Yeah," she said softly. "I think it is." At the door, Sophia hugged Ryan tight. "Thank you," she whispered, "for everything. For saving me then, and for letting me know you now." "Thank you for not giving up on finding me," Ryan whispered back, "for dragging me back into the world." The flight home the next day was bittersweet. Ella spent most of it looking through photos on her tablet. She and Sophia had taken hundreds over the past few days, and talking about everything they'd seen and done. Ryan stared out the window, watching San Francisco disappear beneath the clouds, and felt the weight of the past few days settling over him. Something fundamental had shifted. He'd spent 8 years building walls, and in less than a week, Caroline and Sophia had walked through them like they were made of paper. He'd thought that facing his past would break him, but instead, it had begun to heal him. When they landed in Montana and climbed into Ryan's truck, the mountains greeting them like old friends, Ella sighed contentedly. "I love San Francisco," she said, "but I'm glad to be home." "Me too, kiddo." "Dad, are we really going to have them visit in July?" "If you want to." "I want to." Ella paused. "I like having them in our lives." Caroline's nice, and Sophia's amazing. It feels good to have people again. It does, Ryan admitted. It feels really good. The cabin looked exactly as they'd left it, but somehow it felt different. Smaller, maybe. Less like a fortress, and more like a home. Ryan unloaded their bags while Ella ran inside to check on her plants, and then he stood on the porch for a long moment, breathing in the pine-scented air and listening to the familiar sounds of the forest. His phone buzzed with a text from Caroline. Made it home safe. Sophia's already planning the Montana trip. Thank you again for everything. This week changed our lives. Ryan typed back. Changed mine too, in the best possible way. 3 dots appeared, disappeared, then appeared again. Finally, I'm glad we found you, Ryan. I'm glad you let us in. I'm glad too. He pocketed his phone and went inside, where Ella was already video calling Sophia, the two of them picking up their conversation like no time had passed at all. Ryan made coffee and sat at the kitchen table, listening to his daughter's laughter, and felt something he hadn't felt in 8 years. Hope. Not the fragile, tentative hope of someone afraid to want too much, but solid, grounded hope. The kind that comes from knowing that life can surprise you, that good things can come from terrible things, that healing is possible even when you think you're too broken to be fixed. That night, after Ella had gone to bed, Ryan pulled out Maya's photos again. But this time, looking at them didn't feel like drowning. It felt like remembering, like honoring, like saying thank you to the woman who'd shaped him into someone who would pull 5 kids from a river, even if it cost him everything. I'm doing it, he told her picture. I'm living again, not just surviving. I'm scared out of my mind, but I'm doing it. The photo didn't answer, but Ryan felt Maya's presence anyway. Her approval, her love, her absolute certainty that he was on the right path. Over the next few months, life fell into a new rhythm. Ella and Sophia had their weekly video calls discussing their research project with the kind of intensity usually reserved for professional scientists. Caroline and Ryan texted regularly, nothing deep or romantic, just check-ins and updates and the occasional photo. But underneath the casual communication, something was growing. Something neither of them was quite ready to name yet, but both of them felt. Ryan started working on the curriculum Caroline had suggested, using his nights to write out lesson plans and training protocols. He was surprised to find he enjoyed it. The process of breaking down knowledge into teachable chunks, of thinking about how to help people develop skills that could save their lives. You're good at this, Ella observed one evening, reading over his shoulder. This stuff about reading weather patterns is really clear. Think anyone would actually pay to learn it? Dad, people pay thousands of dollars for wilderness expeditions that don't teach half of what you know. Of course they'd pay. Word of what he was developing got out somehow, probably through one of his guiding clients, and by June, Ryan had 3 inquiries about private wilderness survival courses. He agreed to do one as a test run in early July, before Caroline and Sophia were scheduled to visit. The course was a 3-day intensive for a group of corporate executives who wanted to do team building in the wilderness. Ryan was nervous, worried that his teaching would fall flat or that he'd forgotten how to interact with people who weren't his daughter or his clients. But the moment he started teaching, something clicked. He was good at this. Really good. He could read his students' fear and inexperience and meet them where they were. He could push them just enough to grow without pushing so hard they gave up. And he could explain complex concepts in ways that made sense to people who'd never spent a night outside in their lives. By the end of the 3 days, he had 2 more bookings and a request to develop a longer certification program. When he told Caroline about it during one of their phone calls, he could hear the smile in her voice. I told you, she said, you're a natural teacher. It feels good, Ryan admitted, like I'm doing something that matters, something Maya would have approved of. She would be so proud of you, Ryan. I never met her, but I know that in my bones. How are your preparations for the trip going? Sophia's making lists, so many lists, things to pack, things to photograph, experiments to run, questions to ask you. I think she's more excited about this than she was about getting her driver's license. And you? Are you excited? There was a pause. Terrified, honestly. I'm a city person, Ryan. The most wilderness I usually see is Golden Gate Park. I'll keep you safe. I know you will. That's not what I'm terrified of. Another pause. I'm terrified of what it means, I think. This trip, going to your home, meeting you on your territory instead of mine, it feels significant. It is significant, Ryan said quietly. But that doesn't have to be scary. Doesn't it? Ryan, I've been alone for 5 years. David's death, it broke something in me. I threw myself into finding you partly because it gave me purpose when I didn't have one. But now I've found you, and you're wonderful, and I'm terrified of what comes next. Ryan's heart was pounding. They were edging into territory they'd both carefully avoided, dancing around feelings that were becoming impossible to ignore. Caroline, I've been alone for 8 years. And not just alone, deliberately isolated. I built walls because I couldn't handle connection. But you and Sophia, you knocked those walls down. And yeah, it's terrifying, but it's also the best thing that's happened to me since Maya died. What are we doing, Ryan? I don't know. But I know I want you to come to Montana. I want to show you my world, and then we'll figure out what comes next, together. Together, Caroline repeated softly. I like the sound of that. July arrived with perfect weather, warm days, cool nights, and skies so clear they looked painted. Ryan prepared the cabin obsessively, cleaning and organizing and making sure the guest room was comfortable. Ella laughed at his nervousness. Dad, they're not going to care if the cabin's dusty. They're coming to see us, not to inspect our housekeeping. I know. I just want everything to be right. It will be right because we'll be together. That's all that matters. The day of their arrival, Ryan drove to the airport in Kalispell with his stomach in knots. He'd seen Caroline and Sophia just 4 months ago, but somehow this felt different, more weighted, like they were crossing some invisible threshold into territory that couldn't be uncrossed. He spotted them coming through arrivals, Caroline looking slightly overwhelmed by the small airport's casual atmosphere, Sophia practically bouncing with excitement. When Sophia saw him, she broke into a run and threw herself into his arms. We're here! We're actually here! Ryan caught her and spun her around, laughing. Welcome to Montana! Caroline approached more slowly, carrying 2 enormous backpacks and looking dubiously at Ryan's muddy truck in the parking lot. Please tell me we're not hiking in today. I'm not prepared. We're not hiking in. We're driving. Well, driving-ish. The last mile is pretty rough. Ryan took the backpacks from her and was surprised when she leaned in and kissed his cheek. Hi, she said softly. Hi, yourself. The drive to the cabin took them through some of the most beautiful country Montana had to offer. Sophia pressed her face to the window the whole way, gasping at mountains and valleys and the occasional wildlife. Caroline was quieter, but Ryan could see her taking it all in, her expression shifting from apprehension to wonder as the landscape unfolded around them. When they finally pulled up to the cabin, Ella was waiting on the porch, and the reunion between the 2 girls was everything Ryan had hoped for. Squeals and hugs and rapid-fire conversation about everything they'd been discussing over their video calls. It's beautiful here, Caroline said, taking in the cabin and the forest surrounding it. Photos don't do it justice. Wait until you see the stars, Ryan said. No light pollution up here. On clear nights, you can see the Milky Way. They spent the afternoon settling in and giving Sophia and Caroline a tour of the property. Ryan showed them the well, the solar panels, the garden where Ella grew her experimental tomatoes. Sophia asked a million questions about sustainability and off-grid living, while Caroline mostly listened, occasionally touching Ryan's arm when something particularly impressed her. That evening, Ryan made dinner, grilled trout he'd caught that morning and vegetables from the garden, and they ate on the porch while the sun set over the mountains. The conversation was easy, familiar, like they'd been doing this for years instead of days. This is perfect, Caroline said, leaning back in her chair. I can see why you chose this place. It chose me, really, Ryan said. I was looking for somewhere to disappear, and Montana offered that. But it became more than hiding. It became home. Are you still hiding? Caroline asked quietly. Ryan thought about that. 4 months ago, he would have said yes without hesitation. But now, with Caroline and Sophia here, with Ella laughing at something Sophia said, with the life he'd built opening up to include other people, hiding felt like the wrong word. No, he said. I'm not hiding anymore. I'm just living. Caroline reached over and took his hand, and this time Ryan didn't let go. The first full day of their visit, Ryan woke before dawn out of habit and found Caroline already sitting on the porch, wrapped in a blanket, and watching the sky lighten from black to deep blue to pink. "Couldn't sleep?" he asked quietly, not wanting to startle her. "Didn't want to miss this." She gestured at the sunrise beginning to paint the mountains in shades of gold and rose. "When you live in the city, you forget that mornings can be this beautiful." Ryan poured 2 cups of coffee from the pot he'd made and handed her one before settling into the chair beside her. They sat in comfortable silence, watching the world wake up around them. A hawk circled overhead, riding the early thermals. Somewhere in the distance, an elk bugled. "I understand now," Caroline said finally, "why you chose this place, why you stayed. It's not for everyone." "No, but it's perfect for you, for Ella." She turned to look at him, her face soft in the morning light. "Thank you for sharing it with us. Thank you for coming, for dragging me back into the world, even when I was determined to stay hidden." "You were never going to stay hidden forever, Ryan. You're not built that way. You're someone who helps people, who connects with them. Montana might have slowed you down, but it couldn't change who you fundamentally are." Before Ryan could respond, the cabin door opened and Sophia stumbled out, her hair a mess and her eyes half closed. "Is there coffee?" she mumbled. "Inside," Caroline said with a laugh. "And good morning to you too." "Morning, good. Coffee. Need." Sophia shuffled back inside and Caroline shook her head affectionately. "She's not a morning person. Neither is Ella. They have that in common." "They have a lot in common." Caroline's voice turned serious. "Ryan, I want to talk to you about something. About the girls." Ryan felt a thread of concern. "What about them?" "They've gotten close. Really close. They video chat every day. They text constantly. They've built this whole world together through their research project." Caroline paused. "I'm worried about what happens when that ends. When Sophia goes to college, when lives get busy, when the distance becomes too much." "You think they'll drift apart?" "I think it's inevitable. And I think it's going to hurt both of them when it happens." Caroline looked at him directly. "Unless we do something about it." "What do you mean?" "I mean, maybe the distance doesn't have to be permanent. Maybe there's a way to make this work long term. For them and for—" She stopped herself, but Ryan understood what she'd almost said. "For us." The conversation was interrupted by both girls emerging from the cabin, more awake now and already talking about the day's plans. Ryan had promised to take them on a real wilderness hike, and Sophia had a long list of data she wanted to collect for their research project. They packed supplies and set out mid-morning, following a trail that wound up into the mountains. Ryan led the way, with Ella close behind pointing out plants and animal tracks. Caroline and Sophia brought up the rear, Caroline gamely trying to keep up despite being clearly out of her element. After an hour of steady climbing, they reached a clearing that offered views across the valley. Mountains stretched in every direction, their peaks still snow-capped despite the summer heat. Ryan watched Caroline's face as she took it in, saw the exact moment the beauty of it overwhelmed her. "Oh," she breathed. "Oh, I don't even have words." "Worth the climb?" Ryan asked. "Worth every step." She turned to him, her eyes bright. "How do you not spend every day up here?" "Because then it wouldn't be special. You have to ration perfection or you stop appreciating it." They sat in the clearing for lunch, eating sandwiches Ryan had packed while Sophia and Ella collected soil samples and measured pH levels. Ryan helped when asked, but mostly stayed back, letting the girls work together to refine their methodology. "They're good at this," Caroline observed. "Really good. Their research proposal is actually publishable quality. Sophia's robotics teacher looked it over and said they're doing college-level work. Ella's never had a chance to work with anyone on her level before. It's bringing out the best in her. Sophia, too. She's always been the smartest kid in the room, and I think sometimes that's isolating. Having Ella to collaborate with has helped her see that intelligence is more valuable when it's shared." Ryan watched his daughter measure something in a test tube while Sophia recorded the results, their heads bent together in concentration. "What you said this morning about making the distance work, what did you have in mind?" Caroline was quiet for a moment, choosing her words carefully. "Sophia's a sophomore now, 2 more years of high school, then college. She's applying to schools all over, but MIT is her dream. That's Boston, still far from Montana, but closer than San Francisco." "And?" And I've been thinking about my company, about whether I need to be physically in San Francisco to run it. Most of my executive team works remotely already. I could be anywhere with good internet. Ryan's heart started beating faster. Montana doesn't have good internet. No, but Kalispell does. Or Whitefish. Or any of a dozen small towns within an hour of here. Caroline met his eyes. I'm not saying I'm moving to Montana tomorrow, but I am saying I've been thinking about it. About whether the life I built in San Francisco is the life I actually want, or just the life I settled for after David died. That's a big decision? I know, and I'm not asking you for anything, Ryan. I'm just telling you where my head is, where my heart is. She paused. I think I'm falling for you. Actually, I know I'm falling for you. And I think you might be falling for me too, even if you're too scared to say it yet. Ryan looked at her, this brilliant, determined woman who'd spent 8 years searching for him, who'd refused to give up even when the search seemed hopeless, who was now sitting in his world and saying she wanted to be part of it. I'm terrified, he admitted. I haven't let myself feel this way about anyone since Maya died. I didn't think I could. I didn't think I should. Why not? Because I failed her. Because I wasn't there when she needed me. Because I chose strangers over my own family, and I couldn't live with myself if I made that choice again. Ryan, you didn't choose strangers over your family. You chose to save drowning children because you're a decent human being who couldn't walk away from people in need. That's not a character flaw. That's who you are, and it's exactly why I'm falling for you. What if I can't protect you? What if something happens and I'm not there? Then something happens and you're not there. That's life, Ryan. We can't protect the people we love from everything. All we can do is love them as hard as we can for as long as we have them. Caroline reached out and touched his face. Maya knew that. She loved you knowing you might die in the line of duty, and she loved you anyway, because the alternative, not loving you, was unthinkable. Ryan felt tears sting his eyes. I miss her so much. I know, and you should. She was your wife, the mother of your children. That doesn't go away just because you're ready to love someone else. Caroline's voice was gentle but firm. But Ryan, you're allowed to move forward. You're allowed to be happy again. Maya would want that for you. How do you know? Because every person who truly loves someone wants them to live fully, even after they're gone. I wanted that for David. He made me promise before he died that I wouldn't shut down, wouldn't stop living. I broke that promise for a while. The search for you became a way to avoid dealing with my grief. But I'm ready now. I'm ready to really live again, and I think you might be ready too. From across the clearing, Ella called out, Dad, come look at this reading. It's way different from what we expected. Ryan stood, grateful for the interruption, and went to help the girls. But Caroline's words echoed in his mind for the rest of the afternoon. Was he ready? Could he really open his heart again after spending 8 years keeping it locked away? That evening, after dinner, the four of them sat around a campfire Ryan had built. The stars were coming out, brilliant and countless, and Sophia was using a star chart app on her phone to identify constellations. There's Cassiopeia, she said, pointing, and that bright one is Vega in Lyra. My mom used to tell me the stars were people who died, Ella said quietly, that they were watching over us from up there. That's a beautiful thought, Caroline said. I used to hate it, Ella admitted. I used to think that if Mom was really up there watching, she could see how sad Dad was, how sad I was, and I couldn't understand why she didn't come back if she could see us hurting. Ryan's throat tightened. But I don't hate it anymore, Ella continued. Now I think maybe she's been watching this whole time, watching us meet Caroline and Sophia, watching Dad start to smile again, and maybe she's happy about it. Maybe that's what she wanted all along. Sophia reached over and took Ella's hand. My dad told me before he died that love doesn't end. It just changes form. He said he'd always be with me, just in a different way. I think our parents are both still with us, just not in the way we wish they were. The girls sat together, holding hands and looking at the stars, while Ryan and Caroline watched them from across the fire. Caroline caught Ryan's eye and mouthed, "They're amazing." Ryan nodded, too emotional to speak. His daughter, this incredible, wise, compassionate person, was teaching him how to live again, how to love again, how to believe that the future could hold something besides grief and guilt. Later that night, after the girls had gone to bed, Ryan and Caroline stayed by the dying fire. The silence between them was comfortable, but charged with everything they'd said and everything they still needed to say. "I meant what I said earlier," Caroline said, "about falling for you." "I know." "And?" Ryan took a deep breath. "And I'm falling for you too. I have been since the landslide, probably. Maybe even before that, when I was pulling you out of the mud and you looked at my scar like you'd found something precious." He paused. "But I'm still scared, Caroline. I'm scared of losing someone again. I'm scared of not being enough. I'm scared that I'll mess this up because I don't know how to do this anymore." "You don't have to know how. We'll figure it out together. That's what this is, figuring it out together." Caroline moved closer, taking his hand. "I'm not asking for promises or commitments, Ryan. I'm just asking for possibility. For the chance to see where this goes. And if it doesn't work, if the distance is too much, or our lives don't fit together, or I can't be what you need, then we'll deal with it. But Ryan, what if it does work? What if we actually get a second chance at happiness? Wouldn't it be worth the risk to find out?" Ryan looked at her, really looked at her, and saw not just Caroline but the possibility of a future he'd thought was closed to him, a future that included love and partnership and the kind of deep connection he'd had with Maya. "Yeah," he said quietly, "it would be worth it." Caroline smiled, and in the firelight, she was beautiful. "So what do we do now?" "Now we take it one day at a time. We spend the next week together, see how it feels. And then we make plans. Real plans, not just vague ideas about the future." "I like the sound of that." They sat together until the fire burned down to embers, talking about everything and nothing. Caroline told him about her company, about the projects she was excited about, and the ones that kept her up at night. Ryan told her about the teaching opportunities that kept coming in, about how he was starting to imagine a life that was bigger than just him and Ella. When they finally went inside, Caroline paused at the door to the guest room. "Ryan?" "Yeah?" "Thank you for letting me in. I know it wasn't easy. Thank you for not giving up on me, even when I gave you every reason to." Caroline smiled and stood on her toes to kiss his cheek, lingering just a moment longer than necessary. "Good night, Ryan." "Good night, Caroline." The rest of the week passed in a blur of hikes and lessons and laughter. Ryan taught Sophia and Caroline basic wilderness skills: fire starting, shelter building, water purification. Caroline proved to be a surprisingly quick learner, while Sophia approached everything with the methodical precision of an engineer. They collected data for the girls' research project, hiked to mountain lakes where the water was so clear you could see 30 feet down, and spent evenings around the campfire talking about everything from science to philosophy to their favorite books. Ryan watched Caroline integrate into his world and was amazed by how natural it felt. She wasn't trying to change anything or push him to be different. She was just there, present and engaged, appreciating what he'd built while also gently challenging him to think bigger. On the fourth day, they took a longer hike to a spot Ryan had never shown anyone except Ella, a hidden waterfall that cascaded into a perfect swimming hole. The water was ice cold, fed by snowmelt, but the sun had warmed the rocks around it enough to make swimming bearable. Sophia and Ella jumped in immediately, shrieking at the temperature. Caroline hung back, testing the water with her toe and looking doubtful. "It's freezing." "It's refreshing," Ryan corrected, pulling off his shirt and wading in. "Come on, when are you going to get another chance to swim in a mountain waterfall?" "Never, hopefully," Caroline muttered, but she was smiling as she carefully made her way into the water. They spent the afternoon swimming and sunbathing on the warm rocks. At one point, Ryan surfaced from a dive to find Caroline watching him with an expression that made his heart race. "What?" he asked. "Nothing, just thinking about how different you are here than you were in San Francisco. There, you were so careful, so controlled. Here, you're free." "This is my place. I know every inch of these mountains." "It's more than that. Here, you're yourself, completely, unselfconsciously yourself. It's beautiful to watch." Ryan swam closer. "And in San Francisco?" "In San Francisco, you were still finding your way back, still remembering how to be around people." Caroline reached out and touched his face, her hand cool from the water. "But you're there now. You're back." Because of you, because you wouldn't let me stay hidden, because you were ready to be found. They stayed close, treading water, while across the swimming hole the girls laughed and splashed each other. The moment felt suspended, perfect, like something out of a dream. I want to kiss you, Ryan admitted quietly. Then kiss me. So he did. It was tentative at first, both of them testing the waters of this new territory. But then Caroline's arms came around his neck, and the kiss deepened, and Ryan felt something he hadn't felt in 8 years, the pure, uncomplicated joy of connection. When they finally broke apart, both of them were breathless. Caroline laughed, her forehead resting against his. Well, she said, that was worth waiting for. Yeah, Ryan agreed. It really was. From across the swimming hole, Ella called out, Finally! Sophia, you owe me $5. I said they'd kiss before the week was out. You guys were betting on us? Ryan called back, but he was smiling. Obviously, Ella said. You two have been making eyes at each other all week. It was painful to watch. Caroline was laughing so hard she could barely stay afloat. I love your daughter, she told Ryan. Me too. Most of the time. That evening, they celebrated with a special dinner. Ryan grilled steaks while Ella and Sophia made a salad from the garden, and Caroline attempted to bake a pie with dubious results. The pie came out lopsided and slightly burned, but they ate it anyway, declaring it the best terrible pie they'd ever had. After dinner, they sat on the porch and watched the stars come out. Sophia was using her telescope to show Ella the rings of Saturn when Caroline's phone buzzed with an email alert. Sorry, she said, checking it. I'm trying to stay unplugged, but my CFO was supposed to send me some numbers today. But as she read the email, her expression changed from casual to shocked. What is it? Ryan asked. It's not from my CFO, it's from a literary agent in New York. Caroline looked up, her eyes wide. She wants to represent Sophia's journal. Someone sent her photos of it, probably one of our friends who saw it at the house. And she thinks it could be a published book. She's talking about a 6-figure advance. What? Sophia scrambled over. Let me see that. They huddled around Caroline's phone, reading the email. The agent was effusive in her praise, calling the journal a moving testament to the ripple effects of heroism, and exactly the kind of story the world needs right now. This is insane, Sophia breathed. People want to read my journal? Not just read it, Caroline said. She's talking about a major publisher, national distribution, book tours. Sophia looked at Ryan, her expression complicated. But the journal is about you, about what you did. I can't publish it without your permission. Ryan's mind was reeling. The journal going public meant his story going public. It meant the world knowing about that day, about his choice, about Maya and James. It meant giving up the anonymity he'd fought so hard to maintain. I need to think about this, he said. Of course, Caroline said immediately. Take all the time you need. Sophia, tell her thank you for the interest, but we need to discuss it as a family before making any decisions. As a family? The words settled over Ryan like a warm blanket. When had they become a family? He couldn't pinpoint the exact moment, but it was true. These 4 people, brought together by tragedy and time, had become something that felt like family. Later that night, Ryan couldn't sleep. He kept thinking about the journal, about what it would mean to have his story out in the world. Part of him wanted to refuse immediately, to protect his privacy and Ella's. But another part, a part that sounded suspiciously like Maya, asked whether telling the story might help other people, whether his experience of loss and survival and eventual healing might give hope to someone else walking a similar path. He found Caroline on the porch again, wrapped in a blanket and looking at the stars. Can't sleep either? She asked. Too much in my head. Ryan sat beside her. The journal, the book deal, all of it. You don't have to say yes. Sophia will understand if you want to keep your privacy. Will she? Really? Caroline considered that. She'll be disappointed. This could be huge for her. A published book at 15, her story reaching thousands of people. But she'll understand. She's always put your comfort first. That's the problem. I don't want to be the reason she doesn't take an amazing opportunity. Ryan rubbed his face. But I also don't know if I'm ready for the world to know everything, to have strangers reading about the worst day of my life. What would Maya want? The question stopped Ryan cold. What would Maya want? He thought about it, really thought about it, trying to channel the woman who'd spent her life helping people, who'd chosen emergency medicine because she wanted to make a difference. She'd want the story told, he said finally. She'd say that our pain has a purpose if it helps someone else, that hiding it away helps no one. But what do you want? Ryan looked at Caroline, then through the window at the girls asleep in their respective rooms and felt the answer crystallize in his mind. I want to say yes, not for me, but for Ella, so she can see that the grief we've carried doesn't have to be wasted, so she can understand that her mother's death, as senseless and tragic as it was, led to something meaningful. And maybe, he paused, maybe telling the story will help me finally let go of the guilt I've been carrying. If people read it and understand why I made the choice I made, maybe I can start to believe I made the right one. Caroline took his hand. Then we'll do it. Together. Sophia can have her book deal, but we'll make sure the story is told the right way, with respect for everyone involved, including Maya. You'd help with that. Of course. Ryan, we're in this together now. Your struggles are my struggles. Your victories are my victories. That's what family does. There it was again. Family. Ryan squeezed her hand and felt the weight of 8 years of isolation finally start to lift. The next morning, they told Sophia she could move forward with the book deal. Her joy was incandescent, but she insisted on one condition. The dedication has to be right, she said. It can't just be about me and Ryan. It has to honor Maya too, and James, and my dad, and everyone who's been touched by that day. We'll work on it together, Caroline promised. Make sure every word is perfect. The rest of their visit passed too quickly. They hiked more trails, collected more data, told more stories around more campfires. Ryan taught Caroline how to split wood and start a fire with flint and steel. Sophia and Ella finished establishing their research protocols and made plans for monthly check-ins to track their data. On the last night, they stayed up late talking about the future. Sophia would start working with the literary agent in the fall, while maintaining her schoolwork and robotics commitments. Caroline was seriously considering opening a satellite office in Montana, maybe in Whitefish, which had the infrastructure her company needed. And Ryan was planning to expand his teaching, maybe develop an online course that could reach people beyond Montana. What about us? Caroline asked quietly after the girls had gone to bed. What do we tell people about us? What do you want to tell them? That we're together. That we're building something. That long distance is hard, but we're going to make it work because what we have is worth fighting for. She looked at him. Is that what you want too? Yeah, Ryan said without hesitation. That's exactly what I want. The morning they left was harder than Ryan expected. He'd known it was coming, had mentally prepared himself, but watching Caroline and Sophia pack their bags and load into his truck still felt like a loss. At the airport, Sophia hugged him so tight his ribs ached. Thank you, she whispered, for everything, for saving me then, and for letting me into your life now. Thank you for not giving up on finding me, Ryan said, for bringing me back to the world. Ella and Sophia were both crying when they hugged goodbye, promising to video chat that night and every night after. Caroline held Ryan's face in her hands and kissed him softly. This isn't goodbye, she said. This is see you soon. How soon? I'll be back in 3 weeks. I need to handle some things in San Francisco, but then I'm coming back. And Ryan? Start looking at properties in Whitefish, because I meant what I said about the satellite office. Ryan drove home with Ella, both of them quiet in the aftermath of the visit. The cabin felt empty without Caroline and Sophia's presence, like something vital had been removed from it. Do you miss them already? Ella asked. Yeah, kiddo, I really do. That's good though, right? Missing people means you love them. When did you get so wise? I've always been this wise. You're just finally paying attention. Ella smiled at him. Dad, I'm really happy. For you, for us, for all of this. I know it's scary and complicated, but it's also good. So good. I'm happy too, Elle. For the first time in 8 years, I'm actually genuinely happy. That night, Ryan video called Caroline. She was back in San Francisco in her home office, looking tired but content. How was the flight? He asked. Long. Sophia cried most of the way, missing Ella, and I might have cried a little too, missing you. Caroline smiled. But we're home now, and tomorrow I start making plans to not be home so much anymore. You're really serious about this? About Montana? I'm really serious. About Montana? About you? About us? I spent 8 years searching for you, Ryan. I'm not going to lose you now that I've found you. They talked for hours, the conversation flowing easily despite the distance. When they finally hung up, Ryan felt settled in a way he hadn't since before Maya died. Like he'd finally found his footing again, finally figured out how to move forward without forgetting the past. Over the next few months, their lives shifted and reorganized around their new reality. Caroline made increasingly frequent trips to Montana, first once a month, then twice, then every other week. She found an office space in Whitefish and hired a small local team. The satellite office became real, became functional, became proof that her commitment to this new life wasn't just talk. Sophia's book deal went through. She worked with a literary agent and a ghostwriter to expand her journal into a full manuscript, and Ryan read every draft, offering notes and corrections and making sure Maya's memory was honored properly. The dedication they finally settled on brought tears to his eyes. For Ryan, who gave me life twice. For Maya and James, whose sacrifice made that gift possible. For my father, who taught me that love never dies. And for everyone who's ever had to make an impossible choice, may you find peace. Ella and Sophia maintained their friendship through daily video chats and their ongoing research project. They co-authored a paper on their findings that was accepted to a regional science conference, where they presented together. Sophia flying in from San Francisco, Ella finally getting to leave Montana for something besides visits to Caroline and Sophia. And Ryan continued teaching, his reputation growing as word spread about his wilderness survival courses. He developed the online curriculum Caroline had suggested, and it took off beyond his wildest expectations. People from all over the country enrolled, and he found himself doing video consultations and remote coaching sessions in addition to his in-person courses. 10 months after the landslide that had brought them together, Ryan stood on the porch of his cabin and looked out at a scene that would have been unimaginable a year ago. Caroline was in the kitchen, cooking dinner with Ella. Sophia was in the guest room, which was increasingly just called Sophia's room, working on her college applications. The cabin was full of noise and life and love. His phone buzzed with a text from Caroline. "Come inside. We need to talk." Ryan's stomach clenched with momentary worry, but when he came inside, he found the three of them sitting at the kitchen table with champagne, sparkling cider for the girls, and expectant faces. "What's going on?" he asked. "Sit down," Caroline said, and there was something in her voice that made his heart race. He sat. Ella was grinning. Sophia looked nervous but excited. Caroline took a deep breath. "I made a decision," she said. "Actually, Sophia and I made a decision together. We're moving to Montana, permanently." Ryan's mind went blank. "What?" Sophia got into every school she applied to, including MIT, but she also got into the Montana School of Engineering in Bozeman, which has an incredible robotics program. And she decided that staying close to Ella, staying close to you, was more important than going to MIT. "Sophia, you can't give up MIT for us," Ryan protested. "I'm not giving it up. I'm choosing something different, something better." Sophia reached across the table and took his hand. "You saved my life, Ryan, and in the process, you gave me a family I didn't know I needed. Ella's more than my friend. She's the sister I never had. And you and Mom..." She glanced at Caroline. "You're happy together. Why would I want to be on the other side of the country when my family is here?" "And I already made the decision about the satellite office," Caroline added. "I'm buying a house in Whitefish, close enough to be part of your lives, but far enough to give you space. Unless..." She paused, suddenly looking vulnerable. "Unless you'd want us closer, like right here, with you." Ryan looked around the table at these three faces, his daughter, the girl whose life he'd saved, and the woman who'd saved him right back. This makeshift family that had formed from tragedy and time and stubborn persistence. "I want you here," he said, his voice rough with emotion. "I want you right here, as close as possible. I want to wake up next to you, Caroline. I want to have dinner with all of you every night. I want this to be our home, not just my home." Caroline's eyes filled with tears. "Are you sure?" It's a big step. I've never been more sure of anything. Ryan stood up and pulled her into his arms. I love you. I'm in love with you. And I want to build a life with you. Here, in Montana, with our daughters. Our daughters. The words felt right, felt true. Caroline kissed him, and Ella and Sophia cheered, and for the first time since Maya died, Ryan felt complete. Not because the grief was gone, it would never be completely gone, but because he'd finally learned that grief and joy could coexist. That honoring the past didn't mean refusing the future. That love, once lost, could be found again in unexpected places. That night, after the celebrating had died down and the girls had gone to bed still talking excitedly about the move, Ryan and Caroline sat on the porch under the stars. Are you scared? Caroline asked. Terrified, Ryan admitted, but in a good way, like standing on the edge of something new and knowing you're about to jump. I'm scared too, but I'm also more excited than I've been in years. Caroline leaned against him. We're really doing this, building a life together, being a family. We are. Ryan kissed the top of her head. Thank you, by the way. For what? For not letting me stay hidden, for searching for 8 years, for seeing something in me worth fighting for when I couldn't see it myself. Thank you for letting me find you, for taking the risk of opening your heart again, for giving Sophia the closure she needed and me the love I thought I'd lost forever. They sat in comfortable silence, watching the stars wheel overhead. Somewhere in that vast expanse, Ryan liked to think Maya was watching too. And maybe, just maybe, she was happy for him. Happy that he'd finally stopped surviving and started living again. 6 months later, Caroline and Sophia's belongings arrived in 3 moving trucks. The process of combining households was chaotic. Caroline had more furniture than Ryan's cabin could hold, and there were long negotiations about what stayed and what went to storage. But slowly, deliberately, they built something new together. Sophia's robotics equipment found a home in the converted shed. Caroline's office occupied the new addition they'd built onto the cabin. Ella's room got a fresh coat of paint and new curtains she'd picked out with Caroline. And Ryan's workshop, where he built the custom gear for his teaching courses, expanded to accommodate everyone's projects. They were a family now, officially. Not through marriage. Ryan and Caroline both agreed they didn't need a piece of paper to validate what they had, but through choice and commitment and daily acts of love. On the anniversary of the landslide that had brought them together, they hiked back to the spot where Ryan had pulled Caroline from the mud. The road had been repaired, the debris cleared away, but the memory lingered. Hard to believe it's only been a year and a half, Caroline said, looking at the spot where her SUV had been buried. It feels like we've been together forever. In some ways we have been, Ryan said. Since the bus accident. Our lives have been connected since that day, even when we didn't know it. Sophia placed flowers at the roadside, not just for the anniversary of her rescue, but in memory of Maya and James and David. All the people they'd lost who had led them to each other. I used to think that day was the worst thing that ever happened to me, Sophia said. Being on that bus, thinking I was going to die, the years of therapy and nightmares afterward. But now I see it differently. It was the worst thing and the best thing, because it gave me you, Ryan. And through you I got Ella and this whole life I couldn't have imagined. That's the thing about tragedy, Caroline added. It breaks you open, and sometimes, if you're very lucky, something beautiful grows in the cracks. Ryan pulled them all close. His daughters, his partner, his family. I'm the lucky one, he said. You all saved me, every bit as much as I saved any of you. They stood together on that mountain road, 4 people bound by loss and love, and watched the sun set over the Montana wilderness. The past would always be part of them, woven into who they were and who they would become. But the future stretched out ahead, full of possibility and promise. Ryan had spent 8 years believing his story ended the day Maya died. But standing here with Caroline and Sophia and Ella, he finally understood the truth. That wasn't an ending at all. It was just the beginning of a different chapter, one he was finally ready to write.